Banaza is a traveling merchant in a world where magic and demi-humans exist, but remarkably, he is not racist. He believes in actually paying demi-humans for their work, which I guess most people find annoying when they should really be minding their own business. It would be great if people didn't discriminate against demi-humans and would just live in peace with them, but that would mean giving up all that free labor, so Banaza is the only one who supports them. By complete chance, Banaza seems to have been summoned to another world to become their hero, but as he appears in the summoning circle, he is totally confused by what's going on around him. He is informed that he was summoned by the Kingdom of Klyrode to help them in the battle against the Dark Army since he is a hero candidate, but Banaza corrects them by saying he is not worthy of the title of hero. He thinks there may have been some kind of mistake, but the people around him ignore everything he says and call for a magic orb to be brought up onto the circle by one of the maids. They tell Banaza that the orb will analyze his abilities, and when a hero candidate is summoned, in exchange for having their level reset to 1, the hero candidate is usually given a divine revelation. This is an ability that gives 1 strength that wouldn't be attainable through normal training, however, Banaza just doesn't have 1. And on top of that, his stats are slightly below average for this world, so the summoners start thinking they may have failed again somehow. Banaza can't say he's surprised by the results since he already knew he wasn't particularly special, but they didn't have to rub it in like that. Since he clearly doesn't meet their expectations, he starts asking to be sent back to his original world, but he gets cut off by the fanfare going on in the summoning circle next to him. The people who summon the other guy praise him for having exceptional stats indicative of a true hero, so everyone ditches Banaza and flocks to the side of the new hero to praise him as well. The other guy takes a look at the stats on Banaza's screen, and once he gets a frame of reference for how good his stats truly are, and he immediately lets it go to his head that he is the chosen one. A party is thrown where the king officially appoints the blonde guy as the hero of the kingdom, and while the celebration is going on, Banaza is left on his own. He has never heard of any kingdom called Klyrode before, so he wonders if he is really in another world after all. Regardless, his priority right now should be getting himself back to his original world, but that's going to be difficult since when he finally gets to meet with the king, he is told that the gate connecting to his world has been closed, so there's no way they can send him back now. But not to worry, because they plan to compensate him by kicking him over to a plot of land that they don't use so they never have to see him again. Also, the kingdom messed up by summoning him here and not being able to send him back, so they tell him that he is not allowed to tell anyone about what happened here. With that, Banaza was loaded up into a cart in a rough manner and sent on his way to his new residence in the middle of nowhere. Along the way, Banaza tries to start a conversation with the lizard man who was driving the cart, but the lizard man had been told that he wasn't allowed to speak to Banaza at all, so he declines answering any questions. Banaza tries to get him to open up by asking if he has a slave contract with the king, but the lizard man finds the notion preposterous because slavery was abolished here years ago. He may not get paid the best salary, but he's not a slave to anyone. Humans and demi-humans live in peace here, so there's very little discrimination between them. 20 days into the journey, Banaza has arrived at the Delaveza forest. Once he gets out of the cart, the lizard man hands him a bottomless bag that the king provided him with. It should have enough food and money for him to last a while out here, but before he leaves, the lizard man turns back to him and warns that the Demon Lord's army is known to be active around this area, so in his personal opinion, Banaza should get out of here as soon as possible if he wants to live. As the lizard man leaves, Banaza is grateful for the warning. Even if he told him to run away, where exactly could he go when he doesn't know anything about this world? He takes a look at the bottomless bag he had received, and thankfully, it works the same way as the ones back in his old world, so he's able to use it. He looks through the items available and pulls out a sword so he can defend himself if he needs to, but although the sword looks impressive, it's still just a piece of junk. Banaza then notices a few slimes approaching, but since in his world, slimes were passive mobs, he didn't think these ones would be any different. He was wrong. The slimes attack him and he is forced to slash through all 3 of them to save himself. However, the cheap sword is already broken from just 3 strikes. Banaza is now unarmed. He gets a notification telling him that his level has increased from 1 to 2, and when he checks his stats, they all change to this weird sideways 8 symbol. But it's not like he could have gotten infinite stats from just killing 3 slimes. He is also shown that he can now access the voice guidance system, so he initializes it and is shown all the spells that he now has access to. But it's a little too much information for him all at once. The system also warns him that the bottomless bag he was given has a monster-attracting spell on it, which is probably why slimes decided to attack him against their normal behavior. That, coupled with the fact that he was only given the cheap sword to defend himself, means the king is trying to get him to die out here. The system tells Banaza that he is able to remove the spells on the bag if he wants, so he does so, and the bag is once again safe to carry around. Now that one problem is solved, he still needs to find a safe place so he can protect himself, but as he was about to enter the forest, the system warned him that the forest is contaminated with dense malicium. It's a substance that is produced and dispersed by demons, and it is said to be very harmful to humans if they come into contact with it, so it would be a bad idea to go in there as it is now. The system asks him if he wants to purify the whole forest, and it's actually possible for him to do it, but it will cost him 1/3 of his available magic. Since he is being forced to live here by the kingdom, Banaza thinks he might as well make this place as livable as possible, especially since he has no other use for his magic anyway, so he accepts the terms and a blinding white light is emitted as the whole forest is purified. Banaza doesn't realize the scale of the purification he just did or what that blinding light was, but he then gets a notification telling him that his level has risen, followed by many more of the same notifications. Meanwhile, over in the castle, the princess is pleading with the king to reconsider his decision regarding Banaza since it is their fault that he couldn't return to his world in the first place. So it's not right to send him to that forest knowing it is an almost guaranteed death sentence. The king doesn't see anything wrong with his actions since he views Banaza as an unworthy piece of trash that was too weak to become their hero, but the discussion is soon interrupted by a messenger who has come to inform the king that the highest level holy magic of purification has just been used within the kingdom. The king immediately believes it to be the work of the blonde hero since he had set out towards the south to take on the demon lord, but the messenger reports that it couldn't have been him since the purification magic didn't come from the south, but rather the northern Delaviza forest. Back to Banaza, the level up notifications have finally stopped and he is now level 367, but he doesn't know how he got to this point when to the best of his knowledge he hasn't killed any monsters yet. He assumes he might just gain experience from the act of using magic, so he turns off his level up notifications because it would be annoying to have to listen to that many notifications over and over. He also checks on his magic levels and all the magic he had expended for the purification has already replenished, giving him the false impression that his magic levels are really low since they regenerated so quickly. Moving on, he still has to figure out something for his living situation, but he was banned from living in any town so he doesn't know what to do. The system suggests that he uses some shape-shifting magic to disguise himself so no one can recognize him. Banaza thinks that's a great idea, so the system asks what gender he would like to disguise himself as, so Banaza let his intrusive thoughts take over for a bit and chooses to become a girl, and he's kinda hot. However, after fawning over his body, he starts taking things seriously and transforms into something he can be comfortable with. With his new body, he can now hide in plain sight since no one will recognize him as Banaza, so the system suggests that he use teleportation magic to return to the royal capital. He activates the teleportation magic and is moved to the capital, but since it worked well enough to get him here, he attempts to use it to send him back to his original world, but he has no such luck this time. Since he's going to be stuck here for a while, he's going to need to find a way to make money. And since this world seems fairly similar to his former world, he wonders if there's a guild he can register at. He later arrives at the Adventurers Guild and he registers under the name Fleo to keep his real identity secret. After registering, he goes over to the Nobis board to check out what quests are available since he needs to make some money, but he doubts that he'll be able to get anything good since he is just a new adventurer. Just then, he notices a girl who is looking for an escort to take her to the Delaviza forest, but with the rumors that the Demon Lord's army is stationed there, no sane adventurer is willing to go there for any amount of money. They tell the girl to just wait until an attack unit is sent up there to clear out the forest so it will be safe again, but the girl remains determined to go there now because her family is in danger, so the adventurers stop interacting with her and push past. Fleo approaches the girl and tells her that he is willing to take her there, and it shouldn't take long at all since he can just teleport straight there. Upon hearing Fleo say he can use teleportation magic, everyone in the guild begins talking about him since teleportation magic is something that only the very best sorcerers can use. Fleo hadn't realized it was such a big deal, but it has already brought him so much attention that he is confronted by a royal knight, Bellarosa, and she doesn't believe he can actually use teleportation, so she thinks Fleo is attempting to kidnap the poor defenseless girl, and she and her team are prepared to cut him down immediately. Fleo really doesn't like where things are going, so he tries to defuse the situation by telling the girls that he isn't a suspicious person. Sure, he may be able to use abnormally high-level magic, and his identity of Fleo hasn't existed until about 10 minutes ago, but he's done nothing wrong. If they really don't trust his intentions, then he offers to have the Knights party come along so they can ensure that the girl won't be harmed in any way. His offer catches them off guard, but they accept and head out into a back alley so they don't draw too much attention. Fleo activates his teleportation spell, and everyone is transported to the Delaviza forest instantly. They are all surprised that Fleo can actually use such powerful magic, so they are convinced that he must be a first-order sorcerer of some kind and are also starting to regret the threats they had made to him earlier. Bellerosa gets down to apologize to Fleo for making rude assumptions about him which were completely baseless, and so do the rest of her teammates. Meanwhile, the girl is confused by the state of the forest since she was sure that it was coated in a thick veil of malicium. But now it's all gone and she can't even sense any magic beasts in the area either. Fleo was about to explain that he used purification magic in the forest, but the system warns him that it could be dangerous to reveal that he can use purification magic when he is speaking to a demon. At the same time, the same girls that were ready to cut Fleo open in defense of the girl have all turned their weapons towards her, stating she is suspicious for wanting to come to this dangerous place. The girl acts scared at first, but once it is clear that the party isn't buying her disguise anymore, she begins to reveal her true form. She was Fenris, the younger sister to the demon General Fengril, and she was initially sent to the human town to learn about them and find someone dumb enough to come back here with her so she could eat them. But now that they know her true identity, she needs them all to die. Fenris begins spreading her malicium, and it is enough to bring everyone to their knees. All except Fleo, who is just tanking the damage. Fenris is surprised that he isn't affected by the malicium, but it doesn't matter to her much since she can just finish him off directly instead. She attacks Fleo, but he manages to dodge out of the way at the last second while carrying Bellerosa. He can't protect everyone and fight at the same time, so he uses teleportation magic to send everyone away and faces Fenris alone. He still doesn't know why he had to end up here, but there's no way he is going to let himself die before he gets the chance to do anything in this world, so he's going to throw every spell the system has available at Fenris. As Fenris attacks him, Fleo activates a skill that allows him to leap really high into the air, and he surprises even himself with how much force he was able to generate just now. Fenris attempts to attack him again, so he selects another spell and creates a rock wall for defense. He continues to just spam spells at her until he casts a gravitation spell that pins Fenris to the ground. He knows he's got to do something to take advantage of the opportunity he's got right now, but he doesn't know how to permanently deal with a demon like her. So the system offers a helpless suggestion and asks if he has considered a little something called slavery. Fleo is an advocate for free will and all, so enslavement is the last thing he would ever want to force on someone else, thus he refuses to use the subjugation spell. Fenris attempts to use her magic to get herself out of the gravity spell, but the system negates it and once again suggests that Fleo gives slavery a try. This goes on for a while with the system really trying to convince him that making Fenris a slave is a good idea, but he has his principles and won't compromise on them. While Fleo was arguing with the system, Fenris had gone through every spell she knows, and they were all negated, so she has run out of magic and surrenders herself to Fleo. Without the strength to fight back, she is as good as dead already, so she asks him to end her life quickly. Fleo smiles and tells her that he never wanted to kill her in the first place, nor did he want to fight to begin with, so he undoes the gravity magic and lets Fenris go. She can't believe a human would willingly let a demon live, but Fleo doesn't really care whether he is dealing with a demon or a human. He just doesn't think it's right to kill an opponent who already surrendered. Fenris understands his point of view, but she still thinks he is being very naive. She undoes her beast transformation and returns to her normal human form, but she's naked, so Fleo finds it hard to look at her. He takes off his coat and covers her body before giving her the proposition that if she is willing to not kill humans anymore, then Fleo will look the other way and let her go free. Just not naked. He turns around to see if he has some clothes in his bottomless bag for her to wear, but he then hears a loud thud and finds that Fenris has collapsed. However, the system informs him that it is simply due to her magic being depleted, so there's no reason for him to worry. He sets up camp for the night and spends some time looking through the menu so he can keep track of all the magic he has available to use. But after taking a look at this list, he has no idea why he has access to all this strong magic when he just got here. At the same time, Fenris finally regains consciousness, so she takes a peek outside and sees Fleo sitting in front of the tent. She thinks back to how Fleo completely dominated her without even trying, and she has a strong resistance to magic as well, so he simply overwhelmed her. She always thought humans were a weak race, but now she doesn't know what to think. On another note, it's pretty strange that her magic fully recovered after only a couple of hours when she ran out, so she gets dressed and steps out to ask Fleo if he used healing magic on her. He confirms that he healed her, but if it were any other human, she would have been killed on the spot and skinned to make a Christmas rug, so she gets down on her knees and swears that she will never hurt another human again. And in addition, because she acknowledges Fleo's overwhelming strength, she says she sees him as her master, so she will dedicate her life to serving him. Fleo keeps saying he doesn't want a slave, but this is an isekai, so slavery was always inevitable. Fenris says she'll kill herself right now if she can't become his slave, so Fleo caves and says she can serve him or whatever, but he doesn't want her to die. The two settle down around the campfire as Fleo tells Fenris about the circumstances that brought him here. He tells her that the kingdom summoned him as a hero candidate, but they discovered he had no skills and they couldn't send him back to his original world anymore, so they toss him out here instead. He then undoes the shape-shifting magic to show Fenris what he really looks like. He changed the way he looks so the people from the castle don't recognize and try to kill him to keep their blunder a secret. But even if he has figured out how to keep himself safe, he has no idea what to do from now on. Plus, he is currently homeless, so he can't provide any stability for her. He tries to convince her to not be so insistent on serving him because it will make her life tougher, but she says her species remain completely devoted to whomever they acknowledge as their master, so no matter what may come or where they go, she will always be by Fleo's side no matter what. Fleo can't really argue with her after her declaration of commitment, so he agrees to let her stay by his side and Fenris jumps on him in excitement. Meanwhile, back at the castle, a blonde guy the king appointed as the hero has just returned from the Strike Force mission, and it was an absolute failure with most of the squadron being wiped out. The hero immediately puts all the blame on the soldiers and says they all freaked out and nearly got themselves killed as soon as they saw a magical beast, but he graciously fought tooth and nail to save as many of them as he could, so he won't stand here and be called a failure. The king isn't falling for such obvious BS, so he asks one of the soldiers that was in the squadron what actually happened, and the real story is that the hero stayed behind the army the entire time, and as soon as monsters appeared, he hightailed it out of there, leaving the soldiers fighting for their lives. All in all, he was a bitch. As the blonde hero is leaving, he begins complaining to himself that he has not leveled up at all in the past month. Despite his constant training, the level of his skills remain the same as they were when he was first summoned, and even at that, he is barely strong enough to handle a human or a weak magical beast on his own. So he would get his ass handed to him if he even attempted to fight a magical beast of a higher level. Just as his frustrations were hitting a boiling point, he is suddenly approached by the servant that was assigned to him by the castle, Suya. Since he's not in the best mood right now, he decides that he will go out and treat Suya to all the wonders of luxury. All at the expense of the royal family, of course. Meanwhile, Fleo is thinking of the best way to make some money of his own, so he plans to head into the Adventurers Guild to take on some quests, and Fenris is eager to join her master in whatever he wants to do. Fleo has no problem with her following him, but he would appreciate it if she dropped the master title and just used his name. As they are walking through the market, a man calls out to Fenris to get her to buy some veggies, thinking she and Fleo are a married couple. It's an honest misunderstanding, but now that he thinks about it, Fleo believes it may be easier to travel around this world with Fenris if they acted like a married couple, but only if she's okay with being married to him. Fenris is absolutely elated at the idea of marrying Fleo because her species hold no greater honor than being able to say that their husband is stronger than everyone else. Fleo feels the need to clarify that they will just be pretending to be married to one another, but Fenris doesn't care about the little details as long as she gets to call him her darling. After getting to the Adventurers Guild, Fleo has a guild ID issued to Fenris as well, and she's a little embarrassed because having this means she and Fleo will have a matching accessory. And in her culture, there is something similar which is done as part of a mating ritual. The guild receptionist pretends she didn't hear that whole conversation and just asks Fenris what name she would like to register under, so Fenris merely gives her full name and demon army title, but Fleo stops her in time and just puts down Ray's for her name. Later, Ray's apologizes for nearly getting herself exposed, but he says it is fine since nothing bad happened. Just then, a bell is heard ringing as the receptionist announces that there is an urgent quest they need handled. A huge group of psycho bears have been sighted near the city, and they are heading here right now. Those are the same bears that the blonde hero ran away from, so the adventurers are all scared to tackle this one. To incentivize them to accept, the guild is prepared to offer 10 times the usual reward for the psycho bears, making this a really good way to make some money, especially since there are no rank requirements, but Fleo is still hesitant to accept. Fenris doesn't get why he is so scared since she is sure he could take out the bears in no time, but he still doesn't know just how strong he is, so hearing that the hero lost to these bears has him spooked. To prove to him that he is actually really powerful, Fenris decides that she will go out and fight the bears herself, and if she wins, then it will be proof that Fleo is superior to the hero since he is already confirmed to be stronger than her. They both teleport to the last location where the Psycho Bears were spotted, and they find a house nearby which the guild told them they can use as a base while they hunt. Fenris is glad Fleo decided to come with her, but she lets him know that she can handle a couple of Psycho Bears by herself. Even if she is confident in her abilities, Fleo can't bring himself to just let her do it on her own, and besides, there was a spell he wanted to test out, so he might as well do it here. Just then, they hear screams coming from over the cliff, so they rush over to see if someone is in trouble. They find a group of Psycho Bears attacking that adventuring party that Fleo teleported away while he fought Fenris. Fenris still doesn't like them, so she suggests they just pretend like they didn't see anything and come back for the bears later. But the girls are about to be killed, so Fleo jumps in and uses his lightning magic to take out a bunch of the bears, and since Fleo got himself involved, Fenris jumps down to take out the last bear by stomping it into the ground. However, she still complains that Fleo is being too nice. As Fleo jumps down as well, the knights recognize him and give their thanks for him once again coming to their rescue. Fleo introduces Riz to them as his travel companion, which upsets Riz because he didn't introduce her as his wife. A moment later, a giant Psycho Bear sneaks up behind Riz and tries to attack her. But since she's in a bad mood right now, she simply stares at it, and the bear realizes that it does not want to fight anymore. It falls backwards and lays there, leaving everyone confused. But they soon come to learn that the bear just gave up and surrendered to them. It's good that the bear is smart enough to know that it is outmatched, but they can't exactly just let it go either because it'll just attack someone else eventually. Thus, they come up with the idea to keep this Psycho Bear as a pet so it doesn't attack people anymore. Fleo takes a look at the system and finds something called restriction magic that will keep it from going wild, but even though the bear is tame now, it will still cause a panic if they just walk around with it like this, so he uses shape-shifting magic to make it look like a bunny. The knights can't believe they just witnessed someone tame a bear and then transform it into a bunny, but absurdity aside, Fleo and Riz are definitely powerful, so Belarosa has a request to ask of them. She wishes for Fleo to train them to be able to defeat monsters on the level of Psycho Bears. After the hero came back from his defeat, he blamed the knights for being too incompetent and threw a tantrum, locking himself in his room until they become strong enough to fight so he doesn't have to. Now, it's a completely unreasonable demand, but the king had no choice but to accept, so he ordered the knights to go train themselves. So far, it has been going about as bad as you would expect considering they nearly got killed back there, so they would appreciate it if he trained them. Fleo doesn't know how to respond since he doesn't really understand how his magic works in the first place. He really doesn't want to have to go through the effort of training them, so he tries to use Riz's bad mood as a reason to back out. He tells the knights that she's actually his wife, and he really just wants to spend time with her, so he can't help. But once Riz hears him call her his wife, she becomes so happy that she agrees to have Fleo train the knights. Since there's no backing out, Fleo warns them that he isn't confident in his teaching skills, but he'll try his best to help them regardless. Meanwhile, over in the Demon Kingdom, the Dark One receives a report that there is an individual who possesses magic strong enough to instantly purify the entire Delavizza forest, so the Dark One orders that he be captured at any cost. The next morning, Fleo wakes up to find Riz just staring at him while he sleeps, and when asked why she is doing so, she answered that they are a married couple now, so it is perfectly normal for her to stare at him while he sleeps. We get a flashback to the previous night when Riz was fully prepared to be taken to Pound Town as Fleo's wife, but Fleo still hasn't come to accept this whole arrangement as reality, so he refuses to spend the night with her. Riz is a little hurt by his rejection, but Fleo assures her that it's not that he doesn't like her, but there are a lot of steps to be taken before baby making is on the table, so for now he plans to just sleep out in the hallway so that Riz can have the room to herself. But she counters by saying Balarosa and the others would start to suspect something was off about their marriage if Fleo refused to sleep in the same room as Riz. Therefore, Fleo concedes and now has to stay with her while they are here, but even if mating is off the table, Riz wants to do wide things for Fleo, so she offers to help him get dressed for the day. Fleo doesn't need her help, but since it's a harmless gesture, he doesn't resist as she takes off his shirt. But at that moment, Ballerosa enters the room, and considering the situation, she feels like she is seeing something she shouldn't, immediately leaves. Later that day, they begin the training they agreed to do, but as Ballerosa is faced with a giant boar, she runs away as soon as it charges at her. The warrior tries to take over as the damage dealer, but she takes one swing, and she's immediately out of moves because that's all she knows how to do. Before she can get gored, Riz tells Balana to stop being useless and use her magic to help, so she deploys a defensive spell which is able to block the boar's strike. Fleo then tells Bylary to shoot at the boar, but when she does, this is all the damage the arrow manages to do. It is safe to say that this team is absolutely dog water when it comes to a fight, so Fleo's got a lot of work ahead of him if he plans to train them until they're decent. Since they are going to be here for a while, Fleo offers the girls a room in the house since he now owns it as part of his reward from the Psycho Bear quest. He couldn't exactly let them sleep on the floor forever after all, and they are truly grateful for his consideration. Just then, Riz comes in and tells everyone that she is done preparing lunch so they should come and eat. However, Riz has never been in a kitchen before, so the concept of cooking food is lost on her. Fleo doesn't want to get food poisoning, so he suggests that they cook the meat, but he won't let Riz do it because she's guaranteed to burn it to ash if she tried. Ballerosa offers to help him prepare the food as well, so after some time, a full meal is finally ready. Everyone thinks it looks great, so they compliment Fleo on his amazing cooking skills, but he can't take all the credit for this since Ballerosa is a surprisingly good cook as well. Riz is getting jealous of all the praise Bally is receiving since she is meant to be the wife here. Bali is embarrassed by all the praise and explains that she is actually better at cooking than she is with a sword, which everyone already knew. She came from a fallen noble family and times were tough, so they couldn't afford to hire a chef, so Bali had to learn to cook her own food. Everyone digs in, and the food is as delicious as it looked, but Riz is still having trouble trusting it since she is strictly anti-vegetarian. However, since Fleo was the one who made that salad, she gives it a try, and it's not that bad. Later that day, Fleo takes all the excess boars they killed while hunting into the guild to be assessed, and he is starting to get some attention for how easy he makes it look to take those giant things down. They are waiting to have their boars assessed by the guild, so Riz asks Fleo if it would be alright if she headed into town for a bit. He doesn't have a problem with it since she says she has some business to attend to, and gets approached by a guild employee named Lilith, who wants to discuss some things anyway, so he says they should meet back here once she's done. After Fleo leaves, Riz is determined to begin her training arc of everything gourmet. Meanwhile, Fleo speaks with Lilith, who tells him that he has become quite famous in town for his incredible accomplishments, and tales of his strength have reached all the way to the palace, so an offer is being extended to him so he can work under the hero. He would be appointed as an honorary knight and help in finally defeating the demon lord, but having to deal with the palace again sounds terrible to Fleo. To the people of this world, helping defeat the demon lord would be the highest honor imaginable, but Fleo isn't from this world, so why should he give a damn? He bluntly tells Lilith that he has no interest in anything to do with the hero, nor does he plan to take part in the battle against the demon lord, so after saying everything he wishes to say, he simply leaves. As he steps outside, he finds Riz waiting for him, but she looks like she got caught in a fire, so he is really worried for her well-being. In the time she was gone, she tried to take a cooking class in order to win Fleo's love, but she underestimated how hard it is to follow a recipe and things didn't turn out so well. However, she is still determined to keep trying until she can make a meal that doesn't qualify as charcoal. And over in the castle, Blondie is intent on getting these amazing adventurers in the guild he has heard so much about to join him, so he can get them to do all the hero work for him instead. As a result, for the next month, Fleo and Riz have been receiving unsolicited requests to work under the hero, but they are rejected immediately every time. It has gotten so annoying that Riz is considering taking a more violent approach to the rejections so they don't come back, but Fleo knows the messenger is just doing his job, so he shouldn't have to suffer the consequences. More importantly, they have to return to training Bali and the others. As he heads to the backyard, he finds Blossom tending to the garden, and it is really flourishing under her care because she wants to do something as thanks for all the help he has given them. Which is nice and all, but she has been using this as an excuse not to train her sword skills for a while now. Out in the forest, Riz is trying to get Bylary to try firing arrows at a living target like an archer is meant to. But Bylary is too chicken to fire any arrows at the actual chickens because she thinks they are so cute, so Riz tries to persuade her with a counter-argument. They could eat fried chicken if she shoots it. Bylary still refuses to do it, so her training has hit a dead end. Meanwhile, Bolano is on the brink of passing out due to mana exhaustion. So Fleo came up with the idea to make a ring that can increase her magic capacity so she won't pass out after using her magic once. She is grateful for it. But she lets the intrusive thoughts and feelings she has for Fleo take over for a second and tries putting it on her ring finger. But Reese puts a stop to that real quick because she won't stand for any competition as Fleo's wife. Just then, Ballyrosa calls out for Fleo in a panic because she is losing to a caterpillar, but Reese stops this as well since she won't let Bally get any more attention from Fleo. After they are done with training, everyone heads inside to eat, and even though the food was made by Riz, it actually looks edible now. Fleo asks when she managed to learn how to cook so well, so Riz admits that she took many cooking classes and set a lot of buildings on fire, but it was ultimately worth it for her to be able to cook for Fleo. Meanwhile, out in the woods behind the house, a demon girl is spying on them and she is certain that Reese is definitely the same feared and powerful demon that she knew, but she's fawning over a human so something doesn't add up for her. Fortunately, she'll have the chance to ask about it directly since Reese has found out Euliminez was spying on her. Euliminez is brought inside where Fleo pours her a cup of tea, but Reese isn't interested in entertaining their unannounced guest. So she immediately asks what Euliminez is doing here since she certainly didn't come here to play as a confederate of the Dark One. She explains that she was sent to investigate this area, but then she saw Reese here, so she wanted to figure out what she was doing. Reese in turn explains that she is living there with her husband now, and Euliminez is shocked to hear that Reese has already gotten married, but she doesn't intend to do anything to ruin it for her though. Euliminez takes another sip of tea. She can't believe Reese actually changed so much in the time she's been gone. And another thing she finds strange is Fleo. He seems way too calm considering he's sitting with a demon confederate of the Dark One and Euliminez is unable to analyze his stats with her skill at all. Even the Dark One can't hide his stats from her, so Fleo must be a force to be reckoned with. She changes the subject and talks about how things around here have been changing for a while now, like how the Delavisa forest suddenly became devoid of all magical beasts overnight. Hearing this, Fleo finally recalls the purification spell he used in the beginning, and since all of his other spells seem to be crazy powerful, his purification must have succeeded in purifying the entire forest. Euliminez takes a moment to process what he just said, because if he really did purify the forest, then that means he is the one who killed Fengril and his entire army. In other words, he killed Fenrir's brother, and Euliminez can't believe Fenris would choose to marry him even when she knows he is the reason her brother died. Reese tells Euliminez to shut up for a second since all the accusations on Fleo are getting annoying, but when Fleo asks if she was aware that he killed him, Reese confirms as much. There aren't that many people in the kingdom who are capable of using purification magic on such a large scale, so it was kind of obvious that only Fleo could have done it, but in the end, Fengril was a proud warrior, so he wouldn't want his death to be pitied, even if it was caused by a ridiculous powerhouse like Fleo. And besides, if he didn't want to die, then he shouldn't have let himself get killed. Reese fell in love with him for his strength, so regardless of who he has killed, her feelings about him won't change one bit. Just then, they realize that their entire conversation was overheard by the knights, so they now know that Reese is the same demon Fenris that nearly killed them in the beginning. So they are all even more scared of her, especially Bylary. Seeing that Fleo is a major threat to the Dark Army, Euliminez asks if she can have a match with him so she can see how strong the man Fenris Mary truly is. She believes she can take both of them down at once this way, but Reese isn't going to let it happen because she thinks Euliminez is trying to steal her man. Fleo eventually agrees to the match, and the rules are set so that magic is allowed and it will go on until someone surrenders. Euliminez thinks she has this in the bag as she leaps into the air and casts one spell to distract Fleo, while another one comes from below. However, Fleo dispels both in an instant and counters with his own spell which ties Euliminez up in the air. She is unable to move or defend herself, so she surrenders. The next day, Fleo has a much-needed talk with the knights and apologizes for not telling them who Reese actually is because he thought it would cause trouble. He understands if they wish to report him to the castle, but Fenris tells them that she has completely devoted herself to Fleo, so she isn't a part of the Dark Army any longer. Bally agrees that they would normally have to report this to the castle, but given the fact that Reese isn't a threat anymore and has been helping them for the last month, they may just forget to mention this to the king. Reese is glad to hear this, but then her attention is drawn outside as Euliminez has returned and she's being a sore loser, so she brought a whole dragon army to defeat Fleo. However, instead of fear, Fleo is more so amazed because this is his first time seeing dragons in person. Euliminez orders the dragons to fire at him, so Fleo counters by striking them all down with his magic. In an instant, the strongest dragon army of the Dark One has been reduced to a pile of bodies, and the ones that managed to survive mope the hell out of there since they aren't getting paid enough for this. Blossom tells him he is amazing for being able to handle that many dragons at once, and if she knew it was going to be that easy, she would have thrown her hoe at one of the dragons so she could get the Dragon Slayer title, but Fleo doesn't see a reason why she can't still try. He tells her to throw her hoe at one of the dragons, and as she does so, he buffs the attack, making it powerful enough to pierce through a dragon's neck. She manages to get the title, so the others all rush to Fleo to ask for his help as well, but all the dragons have already left, so they are out of luck. Meanwhile, Lord Gull of the Dark Army has been watching everything and is shocked that Fleo possesses so much power despite not being the hero, so he decides to go and challenge him personally to end this. After their last unwanted guest, Fleo decides to put up a barrier around his house so he will be able to tell as soon as anyone steps foot on their land. Riz is glad that they now have a security system, so if Eulimina's attempts to come back here again, she'll send her packing immediately. Even just thinking about her makes Riz really mad, but Fleo tells her to calm down since it's not that big of an issue. Riz doesn't get why Fleo is being so kind to Eulimina's when she was the one who attacked him first, but it's not so much that Fleo is trying to be nice to her. It's more so because he feels guilty for accidentally killing all those demons in the Delaveza forest without knowing. However, he keeps his guilt to himself and tells Riz it's nothing, so they both get ready to head back home. Meanwhile, back at the house, the girls are all still staring at Blossom's status screen, and Blossom is humbly bragging that she has the Dragon Slayer title. While they are all still admiring it, Valorosa leaves the group and says she is heading off to hunt for the day. The others think it is noble that she is so dedicated to her training, but in reality, she left so she could cry her eyes out because she wanted the Dragon Slayer title too. The Dragon Slayer title is something so extraordinary that every adventurer works really hard in order to get it at some point, but Blossom just got it for free. However, while she was still sulking, she is approached by a man from behind, and he asks for directions because he is here to meet an old friend of his. Valorosa finds it strange that someone would be out in a forest full of magical beasts with such little gear, so she remains cautious and asks who he is here to meet while gripping her blade. The man answers that he is here to see Riz, but if that's the case, then Valorosa deduces that he must be a part of the Dark Army and draws her sword on him. She asks what business he has with Riz, so the man explains that he doesn't want any trouble, and just came here to catch up with her. But if he's not welcome, then he'll take his leave for now. But he asks Valorosa to deliver a message for him and asks Riz if she would be willing to have a chat with him over some tea. Valorosa accepts his request, but before he leaves, she asks what his name is, so the man responds, saying he is called Gozel. A little while after he left, Fleo and Riz come running up to Valorosa and ask if she is alright. Valorosa says she is fine, but a member of the Dark Army was just here looking for Riz. He said his name was Gozel, so Riz immediately knew who it was, but she thinks he could have chosen a better fake name than Gozel. Fleo and Riz came here as fast as they could because the barrier picked up something odd, but what they saw when they got here shocked them. Valorosa was threatening someone whose status said he was the Dark One. So in other words, Gozel could have folded her with a sneeze if he wanted to, but he chose to be civil. His real name is Gull, and now that Valorosa realizes what she did, she's terrified that he may come back for revenge against her later. The next day, Gozel shows up at their front door and Riz is surprised he actually showed up after all. Fleo greets him and invites him to join them for tea inside, but Gozel finds it strange that Fleo is so calm in the presence of the Dark One. As they walk down the hall, Valorosa comes out to go hang some laundry, but then she sees Gozel and he feels like getting some payback for earlier, so he drags her into the meeting with Fleo and Riz, and she's sitting right next to him, so she's scared out of her mind. Riz asks Gozel if he is here for revenge, but he has another purpose for coming here. He wants to recruit Fleo to join the Dark Army. Fleo is a little confused by his request, but Gozel is dead serious, so Fleo gives his honest answer and declines the offer. Gozel is disappointed that Fleo refused his offer, but he asks why he isn't fighting on the side of the humans if he doesn't want to join the Dark Army. Fleo sees no reason to side with humanity just because he is human, plus he has got some personal beef with the king for summoning him here and try and get rid of him. On top of that, he doesn't even know the reason for this whole war since he's not from this world and no one ever explained it to him. Gozel takes it upon himself to explain the war to him. Although it has been going on for so long that there are few people who still remember the actual reason the war started in the first place, but as far as Gozel knows, it started when the first Dark One arrived in this world after being transported here. He was rejected by the humans, so he rose to power among the demons who accepted him as their ruler since they were being oppressed by the humans at the time. That's how the war started, but the longer it dragged on, the more ill will accumulated and stopping it will become almost impossible without one side being eradicated. Fleo asks Gozel if he wishes to stop the war, and Gozel confirms as much, stating that he has no intention of taking over the world like the first Dark One, but he is the king of the demons, and he can't just let his people be put under threat of destruction at the hands of the humans. He unleashes his demonic pressure and asks Fleo once more to join him. But Fleo remains unfazed and reiterates that he has no intention of siding with the humans or demons in this war. Seeing that Fleo is going to be changing his mind on the matter anytime soon, Gozel accepts his decision and gets up to leave, but he makes it clear that this doesn't mean he has given up on winning Fleo over to his side. As he leaves, Gozel thinks to himself that he never would have imagined that he would find someone who could withstand his presence so easily, and she didn't even throw up on herself, so Gozel now has an interest in Balarosa. As he leaves, the other girls come over to check if Balarosa is still sane after what she just went through, and she is definitely going to need some therapy to process this. Balarosa settles for the next best thing and just stays in bed the whole day, so the next morning when she wakes up, she walks downstairs and greets everyone, only to find Gozel in the kitchen having breakfast with Fleo and Riz. Riz still doesn't like him being here, so she wants him to just eat his food and leave, but Fleo thinks she's being too rude to him. Gozel spots Balarosa and says she should come eat with him, but she doesn't want a repeat of yesterday, so she makes up an excuse about needing to get herself dressed first and runs away. But that just makes Gozel more interested in her. Later, she tries to sneak out of the house so she doesn't run into him again, but he was already onto her, so he was waiting outside the door. He tells her he would like to have a chat with her, but she is still really scared of him, so she uses her sword training as an excuse to run away again. The next day, Gozel approaches her again, but she still finds more excuses to avoid him, although that won't stop him from pursuing her. While all this was going on, some spies of the king had been watching Fleo's house and reported that a demon has frequently been visiting him for unknown reasons. The king is enraged that Fleo would ignore his summons, but would then go and join the demons, so he is ready to send soldiers after him. However, the first princess, who is apparently the only voice of reason in the castle, tells the king that it is a bad idea to send soldiers after Fleo now, since they don't know for sure if he actually sided with the demon army or not. And it's just a bad idea in general to antagonize a person who is so powerful. The king refuses to listen to logic and common sense, and things don't get any better because the blonde hero arrives in the throne room, single-handedly dropping the average IQ of the room by 20 points. He has come here with the brilliant idea to force Fleo into fighting in the war, so he asks to be given some soldiers to go and threaten him, because that's totally going to work out in his favor. Over in the Demon Kingdom, Gozel is about to head out to Fleo's house once more, but Uliminis doesn't think it's such a good idea since Fleo is really dangerous. But Gozel doesn't see it that way since Fleo is actually a really understanding person. A lot better than the king who just ignores reason in favor of violence. If he has any chance to win Fleo over, then it would be in his best interest to take it. However, he hasn't forgotten about the ongoing war and is making plans to have his troops move out soon. Meanwhile, back at Fleo's house, he has been working on a prototype of some new equipment made of dragon scales so he can sell them in town. It will take a while before he can make it good enough to be sold, but once he's done, they'll be able to make a decent income off it. Riz asks Fleo if he's sure he made the right decision in rejecting the king's offer to fight, because at least that way he would receive far better rewards than anything he gets now, and he wouldn't need to worry about money. It wouldn't have been hard for him with the abilities he possesses, so she asks if he chose not to fight the demon army because she is a demon. Fleo tells her that it's not because of that, but rather because he knows he possesses incredible power, so he could probably destroy the human or demon kingdom if he wanted. With that much power, he doesn't want to fight anyone as long as he doesn't have to. Just then, they hear a knock at the door, and Riz is sure it must be Gozel again, but Fleo's barrier didn't detect any demons in the vicinity, so it can't be him. As Fleo goes to answer the door, he is greeted with the unpleasant sight of the blonde hero's face and an army of soldiers. He tells Fleo that he has two choices here. Either he can choose to become his subordinate and help defeat the Dark One, or the blonde hero will declare him a Dark Army informant and cut him down immediately. The hero really thinks he accomplished something with his statement, so he is basking in the glory of his own ego. However, Fleo just tells him, "No, I don't think I'll do that." He makes it clear that he doesn't want to fight in the war at all, so he won't be siding with either the kingdom or the Dark Army, but that just makes the hero threaten him as a traitor. The girls speak up and say it's unfair to decide that on his own since Fleo is most certainly not a traitor, but that's exactly what traitors would say, so he threatens to arrest all of them for treason as well. Since he went and involved everyone else in this, Fleo decides that if he can't stay here without fighting, he'll just go somewhere else. If Fleo is leaving, then everyone else says they will go with him as well. Since everyone is in agreement, Fleo casts his teleportation magic to move everyone, as well as the house and land. The hero is stunned by Fleo's ability to use teleportation magic, so he is starting to realize that he may be the inferior one here. Just then, the soldiers spot the man they believe to be a demon, so the hero tries to salvage the situation and orders his men to capture the demon. Gozel is confused why there's a huge hole where Fleo's house used to be, but when he is surrounded by soldiers from the kingdom, he realizes that they must have forced Fleo to leave the area, and he is really angry about it. So much so that he vows to teach them a lesson and calls for his troops to immediately begin their assault on the Klyrode kingdom. Back at the demon castle, Euliminus, as well as all the other demons, heard the declaration of war, so they all awaken to fight. Seeing this, the hero does the only thing he knows how to do and runs away while leaving his soldiers to die. Meanwhile, Fleo has successfully relocated his house to a plot of land near a village called Hauto. Fleo came here a while ago to sell some dragon scales in town, and since it's really far from the capital, there's no way that either the hero or the Dark One will be able to find them, which especially relieves Balarosa because she didn't want the Dark One to end up proposing to her. Fleo apologizes to Reese for having to move so suddenly, but she doesn't mind where they go as long as she gets to stay by his side, and to celebrate their relocation, she decides to cook a wonderful feast for Fleo and the others, which they are all excited for. After Gozel had the order to begin invading the kingdom, several attacks have been carried out as they made their way through the kingdom's outposts. The situation has gotten so dire that the king receives reports saying that the northern barrier may not be able to hold them back much longer. It's at times like this that the kingdom would need their hero to stand up and fight for them, but unfortunately, the wimp went and locked himself in a fortress on the other side of the country so that he wouldn't have to fight. The king expected as much from that coward, but he's the best they got, so he orders for him to be summoned here immediately. In the meantime, he orders for the mages to be assembled in the capital so they can cast a purification to handle the demons, but that plan isn't without its own risks, since if the northern stronghold were to fall while they were casting the spell, they would be completely defenseless. Meanwhile, outside the kingdom's barrier, the Dark One is overseeing the invasion efforts when he receives a report from his subordinate Greenel, who tells him that the preparations he asked for have been made. Hearing this, Gozel tells Euliminus that it's time to withdraw from the battlefield, but she is confused about why he wants to retreat when they are the ones with the advantage here. Gozel explains that the king is likely planning to use large-scale purification magic soon, and he doesn't want any of his demons getting eradicated by it. So as the king and his mages all gather together to cast the purification spell, they indeed manage to activate it, but it helps them kill a total of 0 demons since everyone already left. On to more interesting topics, Fleo is still on the other side of the country from the war and has just returned home to Reyes, who is really happy to see him, almost a little too enthusiastic, so Fleo is feeling slightly concerned. Everyone gathers for dinner, and Reyes asks Fleo how business went today and if he managed to find any buyers for his wares, but he hasn't really gotten to advertise any of his products yet since he is still just scoping out the competition. He needs to know what the average quality and prices are for this area before he does anything, and Blossom seems to have been considering selling her vegetables in town as well to at least pay Fleo back for letting them live here for free. Fleo assures them that he doesn't require payment for their accommodation. Meanwhile, over in the castle, the priest tells the princess that the purification spell they cast will have an effect for the next 3 months, so during that time, the demons won't be able to continue with their attacks. However, if things go on like this, the kingdom won't be able to hold out. Many of the mages have been sent into comas from having their mana depleted after casting the purification spell, and they'll need at least 2 or 3 months to recover. And while the king is respectable for doing his part to activate the spell, it also left him in a state of incapacitation, so he won't be able to do any more until he recovers. As such, until he wakes up, the princess will assume the duties of ruler, and the first thing she's going to do with her new authority is fire the blonde hero from his position as hero. The kingdom was on the brink of destruction a few moments ago, and yet the hero didn't bother to lend his aid, nor did he even leave the stronghold he is hiding in. The retainers are all hesitant to agree since they can't go to war without a hero, but it's not like the current one was being of any help, so they ask if she wants them to begin preparations for another hero summoning. Unfortunately, with most of their mages down for the count, they aren't going to be able to complete another summoning spell, so they'll need to consult the oracle for help. A while later, the former blonde hero has just received the news that his hero status has been revoked, so he is now just the blonde loser. He tries to argue his way back into the stronghold by saying he was appointed by the king to be the hero, but the guard is sick of his shit, so he just dumps his stuff in front of him and walks away. That night, while Fleo and Reyes are in bed, he asks if she's still asleep, and when she responds, he tells her that he's thankful for everything she has done for him. He knows it must be hard enough for her to live with humans to begin with, but she also pushes herself to do the housework and act as his wife, so he is really grateful for it since there's no way he would have had such a peaceful life if he were alone. Coincidentally, the next morning, all the girls decide to do something special for Fleo and Reese, so they tell them that they'll handle all the housework for today, so Fleo is free to go out on a date with Riz. Riz is certainly excited by the idea, but Fleo is hesitant because he has never been on a date before. However, he's already married to Reese, and there's no backing out now, so he gets dragged off for a day of fun in town. He and Reese go out and do a lot of fun date things, later arriving at a market where there are a bunch of rare items on display. Fleo wants to thank Riz for all the help she has given him, so he tells her that she can pick out anything she wants and he'll get it as a gift for her. She is really happy that Fleo wants to give her a gift, so they spend some more time walking around and looking for something Riz likes until eventually they come across this stall selling jewelry, which would make a perfect gift for Riz. So Fleo picks out a blue brooch that matches Riz's general colors, and she absolutely loves it. So much so that she spends the entire night just staring at the wonderful gift she received. The other girls find her behavior a little odd, but she did say something about the brooch being a precious gift from Fleo, so they can understand why she's so happy. But they are also very jealous as well. Later that same night, Fleo was in bed trying to sleep, but he felt two soft things pressing up against his body, so he opened his eyes and found Riz hugging him tightly. He gets embarrassed that he's now sharing a bed with Riz, so he asks her what exactly it is that she's trying to pull. But then he realizes that she's already out cold from exhaustion, and they did have a pretty packed day together. Meanwhile, the blonde loser has somehow managed to break into the castle treasury unnoticed, and is currently digging through the stockpile as a last-ditch effort. His side piece is still sticking beside him mostly because she wants to see what happens and if the blonde loser can somehow regain his status. And rather than just accept that he's no longer the hero and do something like steal a chest full of valuables to live the rich life, he is instead searching through the items in hopes of finding something that can kill the Dark One, as if the kingdom wouldn't have used it already if it was here. As he continues searching, he thinks back to the amazing magic he saw Fleo use to get away from him, and he is still frustrated by the idea that a commoner can use magic far greater than anything he can pull off. If only he were blessed by the plot armor gods, then maybe he could actually be capable of holding the title of hero. His rant of self-pity seems to have drawn the attention of some unknown entity, and this entity speaks directly to the blonde loser, telling him that he can grant him the immense power he wishes for, and all he needs to do is come into this spooky and clearly dangerous hidden. Inside, he finds a sword and a stone which the voice tells him to pick up, and if he does, he will receive the power he wants so desperately. There are a lot of red flags being raised, but the promise of power is too great for him to pass up, so the blonde loser pulls the sword from the stone, and immediately after, he is blown back. Once things settle down, a woman named Hayat is standing before him, and she proclaims herself to be a djinn who commands light and darkness before asking if the blondie is the one who freed her from her prison. He is scared at first, but once he understands the situation, he stands up and confirms that he is the one who set her free. Haya is thankful for his service, so she promises to grant him any 3 wishes he desires, and with the promise of anything he wants, Blondie knows exactly what he wants to do. Meanwhile, back in the castle, the princess has summoned the Oracle Ashura to assist her in saving the kingdom, and since they don't do this often, Ashura knows shit must have hit the fan really bad. The only thing protecting the kingdom right now is the effects of that purification spell, so they need to figure out what to do before it wears off. The princess wants Ashura to try and look into the future to see the best course of action, but before Ashura can look into the future, black collars appear around the heads of everyone in the room. No one understands what's going on since they can't take the collars off, but the princess knows exactly what this means, so she orders the guards to go down to the treasury because someone is down there messing with powers they don't comprehend. In the meantime, Ashura explains that the collars around everyone's necks are called the collars of sacrifice, and it is used by a particular djinn when she's granting a wish. The purpose of the collar is to take the heads off the victims once the wish is granted, but the people have no idea why anyone would use something so dangerous. The princess tells them that long ago, a former king of Klyrode had used the djinn to make a wish to defeat the Dark One of the time, but while his wish was granted, it is said that half of all living things on the continent were sacrificed as a result. Through the efforts of many of the greatest mages in the country, the djinn was successfully sealed away so that a catastrophe like that would never happen again. The seal isn't one that is easy to break, but it seems like whoever managed to free the djinn has already made a wish, and that means everyone here is doomed. The princess says they have time to live until the djinn grants this person's wish, so she asks Ashura to find out the best way to avoid dying here. Ashura understands and begins looking for a solution to their predicament, and a few moments later, she has found the answers to all their problems. To prevent the sacrifice from taking place, they need to find the true hero who has already been summoned. The retainers immediately guess that the true hero must be the guy they failed to recruit to their side, so they are ready to go contact Fleo, who is located in the west according to Ashura. The Goat Man wants to send every single soldier available to look for Fleo, but the princess knows they can't afford to divide the units that have been tasked with defending the kingdom, so instead, she says she will personally look for Fleo. Meanwhile, Fleo is in a weapon shop and has just shown his completed dragon scale shield to the owner, who is really impressed. He can tell that the weapon is made of genuine dragon scales, but it is rather rare, so Fleo makes an excuse about having a top-secret supplier he acquires this stuff from. The shop owner agrees to buy this shield for any price that Fleo wants to sell it for, but under the condition that Fleo sell any other weapons he has in stock to his shop. Fleo is more than happy to agree to that, but he also has a request for the shop owner to direct him to the most trustworthy wholesaler he knows. The shop owner agrees to direct him to the best wholesaler he knows, and all the while, Riz and Balarosa are watching Fleo work and are really impressed by his negotiation skills. Balarosa, for one, is really jealous of Riz for having Fleo as her husband, but Riz gets jealous and was about to decapitate her on the spot for thinking about stealing Fleo from her. Balarosa tries to de-escalate the situation by explaining that she just meant she would love to have a man like Fleo. But if that's the case, Riz reminds Balarosa that Gozel is infatuated with her, so he's always an option, but Balarosa has mixed feelings about her admirer being the Dark One. Fleo exits the shop soon after and walks over to Balarosa to thank her for introducing him to this place. They start leaving and Riz expresses how wonderful she thinks it is that Fleo's business is going well, but she's a little sad that he will have less time to spend with her overall. So she asks that he try to make time for them to hang out together. Fleo is happy to make time for Riz, however, a moment later, he receives a warning from the system telling him that a djinn is approaching. He turns around and finds Haya floating there, and after confirming that the man before her is indeed Fleo, she prepares to fulfill the wish of Blondie. And that is to murder Fleo because he didn't have enough brain cells to think of something better. Riz realizes what's about to happen, so even though Fleo's system deploys an automatic defense shield, she runs out in front of him and ends up getting slashed in the process. Fleo is in shock from what he just witnessed, but all the djinn can think about is how she happened to miss her intended target, so this time she decides to fire spells all around in order to make sure Fleo dies, but his automatic defense magic is able to block it all. While he and Balarosa are panicking over Riz's fatal injury, he tries to use his healing magic to help her recover, but the system informs him that the wounds she has sustained are too grave to be healed. At the same time, the djinn casts her most powerful Origin of Light spell to take down Fleo, but once it is complete, not only is he unharmed, the system also manages to acquire the Origin of Light and Darkness magic. Fleo lets down Riz's corpse to stand up and fueled by rage. The only thing he says is that he will make sure Haya pays for what she has done. He wanted to protect Riz since she was there for him when he was all alone in this world, and while he may have only suggested their marriage so she wouldn't become his slave, she was far happier than he ever would have imagined she would be. And even though she knew that Fleo was the one who killed her brother, she still chose to love him. Yet, after all she has done for him, he still failed to protect her. So the only thing on his mind right now is making sure Haya suffers for what she has done. Fleo activates his time magic to return Riz's body to its original state, although it isn't able to bring the dead back to life, and Haya is shocked that a mere human would be capable of using such powerful magic. But she doesn't get much time to think to herself as Fleo punches her in the face. Haya is launched backwards, and she can't believe that someone would dare to punch a being that has mastered all forms of magic, but Fleo doesn't care about her fancy title and stomps her into the ground. She attempts to use Origin of Darkness magic to defend herself against Fleo, but he simply cancels it out and grabs her by the head. She is in utter disbelief at the fact that Fleo is capable of canceling it out, so as he picks her up by her head, she uses appraisal on him and sees that he has an infinite number of stats at his disposal. Fleo then slams her into the wall and gut punches the shit out of her, and no amount of defensive magic she tries can do anything to stop the attacks he is delivering. At the same time, it seems Riz has woken up and Balarosa asks if she is alright. She says she is fine, but she wonders what happened since there isn't a scratch on her body, even though she should be dead. Balarosa explains that Fleo used his magic to help her recover, but right now he's so overcome by rage that he is beating down Haya nonstop. And if you thought Riz was going to try and stop him, you'd be wrong because she loves it. It makes her happy that Fleo is being so ruthless for her sake, and physical attacks shouldn't even be able to damage a djinn, but Fleo is powerful enough that rules don't matter and he can probably kill her with his bare fists. However, Riz then remembers the time Fleo spared her life and told her that he doesn't like fighting, and that he would rather not kill an opponent who has surrendered, so she is now having mixed feelings about Slip doing this for her sake. By now, Haya has had the confidence smacked out of her, so as Fleo grabs her neck to finish her off, she begs for him to spare her life, but mercy isn't an option here since Fleo still believes she killed Riz. However, before he can snap Haya's neck, Riz comes running up from behind him and says he should stop. She is really happy seeing him get so angry for her sake, but she can't let him break his moral code because of her. He has a rule about not killing someone who had surrendered to him, and she doesn't want Fleo to stop being himself. Fleo snaps out of it and realizes Riz's body is warm, so she really is alive, at which point the two embrace each other while Haya is still unconscious on the floor. Meanwhile, the princess has just arrived near the town in search of Fleo, but the mages she had asked to use teleportation to bring them here seem to be in poor health since they have just barely recovered from their mana depletion. The princess actually cares for her people, so she asks the guards to make sure the mages are protected while she goes to find Fleo, but it shouldn't take long since they just have to ask around for him. Just then, the collars of sacrifice are immediately destroyed, and the princess knows it could mean only one thing: that the djinn failed to grant the wish it was asked for. Back at the castle, things are looking grim for the blonde loser because the treasury has been surrounded by guards and there is no way for him or Suya to get out. He's out of dumb ideas now, and Suya is scared because if they get themselves caught, they will surely be executed for what they've done. The blonde loser can't believe he got scammed by Haya since she ended up not granting his wish. But then another voice echoes out of the spooky hidden room, and it too is surprised that Haya could fail to grant a wish. The voice then grabs Suya and takes over her body since she hasn't had a physical body in over 100 years, and the first thing she does is change Suya's outfit to something she likes more. Blondie still hasn't figured out what is going on yet, so the woman introduces herself as Damalinas, the Grand Magnus of Midnight. And since Haya failed to grant his wish, she'll give him the great power he desires. Although she never said he was going to like how he gets his power. Damalinas then rides the monster Blondie out of the treasury and is ready to take revenge on all the nobles that sealed her away, but as she exits, she notices the teleportation circle that the princess used to go look for Fleo, and she assumes it must have been used to try and escape because they knew she was coming. So she flies off to eradicate every last noble in the land, including all their successors and descendants. At the same time, Fleo has just healed Haya, and once she wakes up, she immediately begins pleading for forgiveness since she doesn't want to fight Fleo anymore. She realizes she was healed by Fleo. That's only because Riz managed to survive in the end, and now they need to figure out what to do with her since turning her over to the guards wouldn't do much good since she's stronger than them. Fleo thinks they could just seal her away in the castle treasury like before, but Haya doesn't understand how Fleo could possibly know about where she came from. The reason he knows about that is because while Haya was unconscious, he used a spell to look through her memories and saw everything from the moment she was unsealed to the wish Blondie made to have Fleo killed. He knows she's a djinn that grants wishes, but only at a massive price, so if he just sends her back to the castle, then the same thing might just happen again one day. Therefore, Riz decides that it would be a good idea to make Haya Fleo's servant. Fleo tries to reject the idea, but Riz stops him and mentions that she is well aware that he doesn't want a servant, but they can't trust the castle to keep Haya under control, so they should keep her close by. It also helps that Riz loves how strong Haya is, so Fleo gives in and agrees to let Haya join them. But he asks Riz if she is really alright with it since Haya did kind of kill her back there. Riz is indeed frustrated by it, but in the end, it was her own lack of strength that allowed Haya to defeat her in the first place, so she can't be mad about it. Since Riz isn't angry at Haya, it doesn't make sense for Fleo to stay mad at her forever, so he extends his hand and says that as long as Haya promises to never take another life again, that he is willing to forgive her. Haya is stunned because humans are so unwilling to part with hate and resentment that they have desires that make them willing to sacrifice others. She takes his hand and pledges to serve him with every inch of her body and every ounce of power she possesses, and Fleo apologizes for taking things too far when he was fighting her. However, Haya tells him that there's no need to apologize for, since if she's being honest, she kind of liked it. Riz can sense some Fleo-related shenanigans brewing in Haya's mind, but Haya denies it. That aside, Fleo realizes that he has done quite a bit of damage to the town. But since time manipulation magic worked with bringing Riz back to life, he figures that it could probably restore the town back to its original state as well. However, before he activates it, Haya asks him never to use that kind of magic again. She explains that time manipulation is magic only for individuals within a certain range, but if care is not taken, then there could be discrepancies between those within the range and those outside of it. And that could easily lead to a lot of unforeseen consequences. As long as Haya is the one using it, she's able to narrow down the target to only one individual, but it was never meant to be used by a human. If that's the case, then Fleo asks why he has access to a spell like that, and Haya believes it is because he is a supreme being. As a supreme being, his skills are infinite, and with infinite skills, he is able to use a type of magic known as Epiphany, which allows him to learn any magic and all associated types of magic if it is used against him once. So when Haya attacked him, he was able to learn all the magic that a djinn is able to use, but as she mentioned before, using time manipulation magic is incredibly dangerous, so she asks that he refrain from using it again. Fleo agrees to not use that spell so carelessly, so instead, he decides to just use a repair spell to fix all the damage to the town. Later, Flea returns home and introduces Haya to the rest of the girls, and they are all terrified of the idea that someone as powerful as her will be living here. Haya doesn't really have a home, so Fleo thought she might as well live here, but that doesn't put any one of the others at ease. Balarosa comes in and says the room is ready for Haya, and to calm the others down, she says that Haya probably won't kill them as long as Fleo is around. That night, Fleo has a lot of self-reflection to do since he broke his code of pacifism today and found out that he is some kind of supreme being, but then Balarosa finds him and asks if everything is alright since he is just sitting by himself. He says he's fine and apologizes to Balarosa for everything that happened today since she must have been terribly scared, but she says he has nothing to be sorry for. Fleo says he may have incredible power, but he has no idea how he is supposed to use it, and Balarosa doesn't know how to help him since she wouldn't know what to do either. Recently, she's been realizing that a lot of the people she had thought were enemies are actually really nice, and some people whom she had thought were allies are actually scumbags. So she doesn't even know why she is training to get stronger anymore because she has no idea who she should fight. She is thankful that she met Fleo and Reese because they opened her eyes to the fact that nothing is completely black and white, and talking to her seems to have lifted Fleo's mood a bit. Fleo heads up to his room and he sees Riz lost in thought, so he asks her what's wrong. She doesn't say anything at first, but then she grabs Fleo's hand and flips him over onto the bed before asking him if he's going to go back to his original world. Fleo is confused by the sudden question, but based on what Haya said earlier, Fleo has now acquired all spells that a djinn should be able to use, which means he now has the ability to return to his world if he wants to. But if he is going to leave, Riz wants him to take her too. She doesn't care where they go as long as she is with him, and after realizing how much she wants to be with him, Fleo answers that he won't be going back to his original world. That world still has a lot of discrimination towards demi-humans, so it would be really hard for Riz to live there. But he also has no intentions of leaving her behind either. He asks her if she would like to become his real wife because earlier today when he thought Riz had died, he knows he had said it was just a fake marriage at the start, but he realized that he can't live without her anymore. Riz already thought of him as her real husband, but it makes her happy to hear him say he wants to be with her. So for the first time, the two share a kiss. A lot more was going to happen as well, but then Fleo realized that Haya is standing right behind them. They are both embarrassed and Riz asks how long she has been there, but Haya has been watching since the moment Fleo sat down on the bed, so she saw everything. Fleo bans Haya from spying on him anymore, but she doesn't see what the issue is since breeding is a totally natural thing, but that doesn't change the fact that he doesn't want to be watched while he's doing it. Even though the djinn problem has been solved, the princess is still searching through town for Fleo, but since the only description she has of him is that he is meant to be really powerful, the locals have no idea who it is that she is looking for. She leaves the store disappointed since she hasn't managed to gain any new leads on Fleo's locations. Meanwhile, Fleo is having a delicious meal with everyone, and this time Haya helped as well. Haya says she could have used magic to make everything in an instant, but Riz wanted to do it by hand to make it special. She takes pride in cooking since she's Fleo's wife, but since Haya wants to help out, she can handle the cleaning and laundry from now on. Haya is happy to make herself useful, but this presents a problem for everyone else here since if Haya is handling all the chores now, then they are back to being just a bunch of freeloaders. Although Blossom still has her crops, so at least she is still contributing to the household, and she's going to make sure Haya doesn't take this from her, so she worked even harder than usual with a little help from Saib. Byrelli is also trying to make herself useful by taking care of the stables, but it's a little more than she bargained for. Meanwhile, Bolano is having a bit of an existential crisis. She feels like she would be a disappointment to her brother and father since she left the Knight's Order before she could officially become a mage like them. Right now, there's no reason for her to keep trying to grow stronger, but when Fleo teaches her magic, he remains patient with her until she finally understands it, and she doesn't want to waste the effort he is putting into teaching her. Just then, Bolano and Byrelli hear Blossom screaming at the top of her lungs, so they rush outside and discover that Magic Beast has somehow made its way into the fields and is currently tearing them up for no reason. The beast then charges at the two of them, but Bolano's training seems to have paid off as she is able to successfully deploy a magic shield without running out of mana, and thanks to that, they are both unharmed. Balarosa apologizes for causing this mess as she was the one who brought the beast inside. While she was out hunting, she came across it, but it seemed far calmer than a normal one, so she couldn't bring herself to kill it. However, it's going to start attacking people all of a sudden, then she has no choice but to cut it down for everyone's safety. However, Valerie doesn't think that's going to be necessary since she has figured out why the beast went crazy in the first place. She tells Sai to transform back into his bunny form so the horse won't be spooked anymore, and then ties some rope to a shovel before tossing it into the horse's mouth and mounting it. With her makeshift bridle, she proceeds to calm the horse down until it is no longer rampaging, and everyone praises her for being able to tame a magical beast so easily. The sense of accomplishment gets Bairele thinking about something, so she asks Balarosa if they would be allowed to use the land surrounding Fleo's house. The land belongs to the local lord, so they can't really do that, but they could always buy the rights to it from the lord like Fleo did after he moved the house here, and that gives her an idea. Meanwhile, Fleo is out in town with Riz, and she is glad they finally get some alone time with him. Although this isn't exactly a date since he just came here to sell some of his equipment, but that's good enough for Riz. Fleo heads into the store to sell some light armor, and the owner is pleased with how well made it is, but he'd like to add some color to it, so he starts showing to him some light stones that he could use for later batches. While Fleo is handling business, Riz is waiting outside and can hardly contain her excitement over how handsome Fleo looks while working, but then the sky goes dark all of a sudden, which definitely can't be a good sign. The princess and her guards had just met back up when a magic circle appears in the sky, and the blonde monster descends upon the village along with Damalinas, and she's out for blood. By now, Fleo has realized something is wrong, so he meets back up with Riz, who tells him about the monster that appeared, and while Fleo isn't sure what caused this, he wants to make sure that the townspeople stay safe. Meanwhile, as soon as Damalinas spots the princess, she gets ready to attack, and to their credit, the guards bravely stood their ground against her, but they are sorely outmatched by her power, so Damalinas just uses a small spell to blow them away. Haya arrives on the scene shortly after, having sensed a lot of evil in the area, and since she is here, she informs Fleo that the monster that is going on a rampage is actually a human who was transformed, and the real threat here is the witch in the monster's shoulder, Damalinas. Long ago, she ruled as the most powerful mage in Klyrode, but then she sullied her hands by getting involved with dark magic. Before she could cause any harm, the hero of the time defeated her, but even with her body destroyed, her spirit remained through the sheer force of her hatred, so they had to seal it in a pedestal, which coincidentally is the same one Haya's sword seal was placed in. As such, Haya feels partially responsible for Damalinas being freed, even though it was pretty dumb for the royal family to think sealing two powerful threats in the same place was a good idea. She tells Fleo that she would like to handle Damalinas herself, and Fleo has no complaints, but he reminds her that the safety of the people should remain the #1 priority. Meanwhile, Damalinas is laughing in the face of the princess since she's only got one guard left standing, and his legs may be jiggling like crazy, but he deserves a raise for his commitment. The princess recognizes Damalinas from the historical texts, so she knows just how screwed she is, and Damalinas wants to savor every moment as she gets her revenge against the royal family. However, before the princess can be turned to mush, Haya casts a fire spell to protect her. Damalinas can't believe Haya would dare to stand in the way of her revenge, but Haya couldn't care less what Damalinas is planning as she's just acting on behalf of her master. Damalinas refuses to back down, so she launches a lightning spell at Haya, but it has no effect as it is stopped with one hand. Haya stands at the pinnacle of magic in this world, and since Damalinas is a being of this world, then regardless of how powerful she may appear, no magic she possesses will ever be able to harm Haya. Since magic doesn't seem to work, Damalinas switches tactics and gets the blonde monster to try stomping on Haya, while she also casts another attack spell, but it still does not affect Haya whatsoever. Damalinas is starting to get desperate, so she unleashes all the dark magic she has at her disposal in order to make the blonde monster even bigger so she can cause as much destruction as possible. And it certainly would have been able to do a lot of damage if her spell had lasted more than 3 seconds, but Fleo soon comes running up and says he saw the evil-looking spell being cast, so he decided to use release magic to cancel it out. Haya apologizes to him for not being able to handle Damalinas quickly enough and for causing him so much trouble, but Fleo doesn't hold it against her at all. Haya still wants to make it up to him though, so she asks to be allowed to finish off Damalinas, and once she is given the green light, she uses a spell to suck her soul out of Tsuya and turn her into a piece of candy, which Haya then swallows without hesitation. Fleo asks it is really alright for her to just eat Damalinas like that, but she says is perfectly safe since Damalinas is now sealed with her mindscape, where she will be tortured, re-educated for as long as it takes until she changes her ways. That aside, they don't know what to do about the blonde hero since he basically caused this whole mess, but Fleo doesn't want to have to waste his breath talking to him, so they're just going to leave him for the castle guards to handle. Just then, Princess Elizabeth comes up to them and she is glad to have finally found Fleo, so she introduces herself to him and profusely apologizes for all the disrespect he has had to endure from the king and the previous hero. Fleo tells her there is no need to apologize, but he is surprised to find out that they actually fired the blonde hero. The blonde hero had already caused so much trouble, so it was an easy decision for Elizabeth to make, and now that the kingdom is without a hero, she hopes Fleo will be willing to return with her to the castle and become the true hero of the kingdom. Fleo appreciates her asking nicely, but he is still going to have to refuse the responsibility. If she is looking for a hero, then she would be much better off finding someone who won't hesitate to use their power for the sake of humanity. But that person is not going to be Fleo, since he doesn't particularly care about humanity here. All he wants is to be able to live in peace with his wife, so he doesn't want to get involved with any political matters at all. Later, Fleo has finally returned home, and he is immediately bombarded by the girls who have a request to ask of him. They were hoping he would consider expanding his territory because Byrelli wants to start catching and rearing magical beasts, and Blossom wants to extend her farmland so she can grow more crops. With the two new activities, they'll be able to haul the extra vegetables into town with the horses and sell them for extra profit. Riz likes the idea, but she is concerned that the magical beasts won't obey them since they are just humans, so she thinks it might be better to just get horses instead. Byrelli thought of that, but keeping horses ain't cheap, and the magical beasts will probably turn out peaceful if she lets them roam around in a large open field for a while. Fleo is on board with the idea, so he says he'll go talk with the local domain lord to get his permission, and the girls are thankful. But Byrelli says they would like to do the negotiation and purchasing on their own, so they'll be properly contributing to the household. Fleo doesn't have a problem with it, but land is pretty expensive, so he wants to make sure they know how much they are going to spend if they want to buy the land themselves. After some brief calculations, the girls are stunned by the figures they see before them, and they can't believe land is still so expensive all the way out in the countryside. Fleo explains that since he arrived here, demons stopped showing up, so the land prices skyrocketed due to the increased safety. The girls start considering selling all their stuff in order to be able to afford the land, but Fleo tells them there is no need for that since he'll pay for the land himself. He'll be part of the house anyway, so it's only fair that the house owners buy it. He'd be happy if they just took care of the land for him. But the girls don't feel like they would be contributing much in that case, so instead, they settle on a deal to pay Fleo 30% of the profits they make from using his land. The girls are happy with the arrangements, so they all eagerly begin working on the new land once Fleo purchases it. And since they are on the topic of farming, Fleo suggests that they grow something that can't normally be framed in this area to maximize profits. He will be able to control the climate around the crops to some extent, so it should be possible to pull off, but Blossom is against the idea since she believes farming should be done by hand and she doesn't want to accept any extra help from Fleo since this is meant to be her way of paying him back. If she really doesn't want Fleo to get involved, then Haya offers to do the magical climate control instead, but Blossom still refuses on the grounds of magical farming not being natural. Haya isn't going to push the issue, but she does mention that doing it without magic is going to be terribly inefficient, and Balana sides with her, urging Blossom to let Haya use magic on the farm because she is interested to see how it turns out. They notice that she is fully dressed for something, so she tells them that she was just about to head out to the Magic Academy since she was accepted there. She wanted to attend so she could relearn magic from the basics, but after the application test, they thought she was qualified enough to become a teacher there, and it's all because Fleo taught her how to be a lot less of a screw-up with magic. Fleo helped her realize that magic can be used for much more than just combat, so she really wants Blossom to try growing crops with magic as well. And after a little persuasion from Fleo, she finally gives in. Now, everyone is doing their part to contribute to the household income, except Balarosa, who is still technically a freeloader. While watching them, Fleo tells Riz that he has also thought of something he wants to do long-term, and his goal is to open a shop one day. Riz loves the idea and promises to tell all her friends about it, so they'll come on the opening day and she'll make sure they all take human forms since her friends are demons. It's a little off-topic, but Fleo takes the moment to give Riz a gift he had made for her. It's a wedding ring, and he wants Riz to accept it to officially commemorate their marriage, and she happily does so. In other news, the blonde loser has been locked up in the castle dungeon, and he is likely to be executed for his various crimes of breaking into the castle treasury, unleashing national-level threats, and worst of all, having a really annoying face. A while later, Balarosa imagining herself in a wedding dress. But when she sees Ulimin is there to congratulate her, she realizes that this dream is also her worst nightmare since she is meant to get married to the Dark One. He tells her she can call him Gozel since there's no need to be so formal now that she is his wife, and in honor of the grand occasion, the entire demon army tells her that they will increase their efforts to take over the world so they can present it to her as a wedding gift. Ballerosa now quickly begins backtracking since she says she doesn't want the world, but then she gets cut off by the Dark One who pulls her chin up for a kiss. And that's when she wakes up from her nightmare. She's glad it was just a nightmare, but then she starts wondering why she is dreaming about the Dark One marrying her in the first place since she hadn't even considered a relationship with him. Ballerosa now starts screaming to herself because she knows this means there is going to be more drama with the Dark One soon, but the others don't care and just tell her to have her panic attack quietly so they can sleep. The next morning, Ballerosa is still feeling quite drained from all her yelling from the night before, so while they are baking together, Riz asks if she is feeling alright. Ballerosa says she is fine, and it is just that she didn't get enough sleep the last night since she has been having weird dreams lately. Despite not receiving any information about who her dreams are about, Riz is able to deduce that Ballerosa must be lovesick, since her race believes dreams are the image of what the person desires most. But that would mean Ballerosa subconsciously wants Dark One, so she can't accept it. The other girls heard the word love, so they all drop what they were doing and rush into the kitchen to hear all the details about who Ballerosa is in love with, and their deductive skills are amazing because they immediately figure out that it's the Dark One Ballerosa must be secretly in love with. It makes sense to them since Gozel was coming here really often just to see her, but Ballerosa is still in denial and claims that Gozel was just here to meet with Fleo, so it had nothing to do with her. However, the others know for a fact that he was only here for her since he would immediately leave if she wasn't here when he came, and Ballerosa has run out of ways to explain his behavior, so she comes to terms with the fact that he may actually like her. The others mention how she could probably bridge the gap between humans and demons if she talked with Gozel things out with him, just like Fleo and Riz did. Although she may not want to marry him after one day like Riz did. Now that she mentions it, no one has ever heard Riz tell the story of how she fell in love with Fleo in the first place, and they are all pretty curious, so they gather around and ask what made her fall for Fleo. Fleo happened to be in the room, so he heard everything Riz had to say about him, and he is feeling really embarrassed right now, but his embarrassment is interrupted as one of his alarms goes off. He had set up a barrier around the village for the sake of keeping demons out and protecting the town, but something still managed to slip through. Haya confirms his suspicions when she says she senses the power of a demon nearby, so it must be a demon that slipped in. The others ask if the village is going to be in any danger, but Fleo isn't sure this demon is a threat yet since they haven't done any damage, and they didn't destroy the barrier. So for now, he just wants everyone to keep an eye on the town to make sure nothing bad happens. Meanwhile, over in the palace, the princess has just received some alarming news. Back when Fleo declined her offer to become the kingdom's official hero, he stated his intentions to remain neutral in all disputes between the humans and demons, but he offered her the bag of gold coins he received when he first got here and asked her to use it to rebuild the damaged city. The alarming part in all this is that the gold coins Fleo had are not in circulation among the public, and as far as the retainer knows, there is only one person who they have given those coins to before, and that would be Banaza, the man they summoned as a hero and then banished immediately after. He suspects that Fleo and Banaza are the same person, and if that is really true, then it's no wonder Fleo is greatly opposed to having any business with the royal family. Before anything else, she wants to formally offer an apology to Fleo for the way he was treated when he first arrived. However, as she is thinking of how to go about it, a guard comes to inform her of some more worrying news. The blonde loser and Suya have somehow managed to escape their holding cells and have fled the castle. The guard apologizes since he didn't realize Blondie had enough brain cells to think of an escape plan, but the princess doesn't blame him and instead just asks that he inform the adventurers across the kingdom to find Blondie. Elizabeth wishes they had just made Flea the hero in the first place, but there's no point in thinking about what could have been. Meanwhile, the guards are outside searching for Blondie and Suya, but they can't find a single trace of them. The guards go to search another location, but as they leave, two figures can be seen inside the bushes. Suya hates this since they have been on the run ever since they escaped the cells. Blondie blames it all on Haya for not being able to grant his wishes, so now it looks as if he's a criminal. Suya points out that he just escaped prison and he also stole from the castle treasury, but Blondie is still trying to rationalize his actions. Sure, they may have escaped prison, but he never actually stole anything. However, that's just not true because amid all the chaos, they stole a bottomless bag. According to Blondie's logic, this doesn't count as stealing since he's just taking what he was rightfully owed by the kingdom. They had agreed to provide him with enough money to live out the rest of his days as he pleases once he was done with his hero duties, but that also means he would have to have done at least something heroic. He believes it is only fair that he gets to at least take one bottomless bag, but now that he thinks about it, he hasn't even looked inside to see what he stole. He checks the items stored inside the bag, and to his horror, it has absolutely no money in it. All that's there is a bottomless water pouch and a treasure chest. The treasure chest is at least a little intriguing, so the hero takes it out, thinking that maybe he can sell everything inside to make some money. But when he opens it, he finds something called a drill bulldozer shovel. Just then, the guards have been alerted to their position from the sound of their surprise, so they all start running straight for the bush that they had been hiding in. However, when they get to the bush, they find nothing there. Blondie and Suya escaped by tunneling into the ground, so they are thoroughly impressed with the power of the shovel. But it makes sense since it was locked away in the castle treasury. It's perfect for keeping them hidden, but now they have to worry about how they are going to get out of here. Meanwhile, over in the demon castle, Gozel receives a report from Uliminas telling him that she has not been able to find Fleo or his companions yet, and by companions he specifically means Balarosa. Uliminas apologizes and explains that she has her intelligence courts out searching everywhere, but it is possible that Fleo could have fled to another country. Gozel doesn't think that is a possibility because even though Fleo's magic is incredibly strong, teleportation magic only allows the user to go to places that they have visited before. It has not been long since Fleo was summoned to this world, so there is no way he would have had enough time to visit another country. Even if that is the case, Uliminas can't help but question the reasoning behind prioritizing a search for Fleo above the advance of his army and the humans. No matter how strong the purification magic is, if they take enough magical beasts to the border, they'll be able to fill the area with Militium again and create a perfectly usable path into the kingdom. If they react now, they may even be able to bring down the castle. Gozel has heard enough and reminds Uliminas that Fleo is a man who can use purification magic single-handedly, so even if they cut a hole through the purification and end up attacking his new place of residence, he could easily just spam the spell to get rid of them. That is why they need to find Fleo first, but Uliminas is still worried because the people are growing restless over Gozel's lack of commitment to the war effort. So Gozel gets up from his throne and starts walking over to her. Uliminas fears that she may have angered him, but he actually just apologizes to her for not being willing to do what she thinks is necessary. He finds no meaning in sacrificing many of their comrades just for the sake of defeating the human. Uliminas seems to understand his views now, but there seems to have been someone listening in on the conversation, and by the look of those glasses, she's going to be trouble later on. She goes and reports what she has learned to Gozel's brother, Uegard, and he is absolutely furious. Not only is Gozel refusing to continue with the army's advance, but he is also talking about adding a human named Fleo to the demon army. The demon tries to explain that Fleo supposedly possesses unfathomable power, but Uegard doesn't care and puts his foot down. It shouldn't matter how powerful he is, since whether he is powerful or not, if he is a human, then they just need to kill him. The demon agrees with his logic, so Uegard declares that he will have to take the position of Dark One from his brother, since he clearly isn't fit to lead the demons. Back in the kingdom, Fleo has just finished shopping with Riz, and even though his barrier picked up another breach, things seem pretty peaceful here, so he's not too worried about it. And since they have some extra time before they need to head home, Fleo suggests that he and Riz spend some time together to get lunch. But as they are walking, they notice that one of their favorite general supply stores is closing down, so they go over to ask Holdy what happened. She confirms that she is closing her store, and it's because she no longer has a supplier for her goods. The place she would usually go was destroyed in the last battle with the demon army. Once they arrive at the restaurant they wish to eat at, they end up bumping into Balarosa, and since she is here, she offers to treat the two of them to lunch. Riz is disappointed that her romantic lunch with Fleo is ruined, but she is also wondering what made Balarosa want to treat them to a meal all of a sudden. She explains that she recently had her adventurer rank go up by 1, so her reward money has increased. But internally, she reveals that she just wanted to shake off the demon that has been following her. Regardless of her reasons, she still wants to thank Fleo and Riz for all that they've done for her, so Fleo and Riz accept her offer. However, before they can actually go in to eat, Haya shows up in a panic because a being of immense power is heading this way, so she asks Fleo to stand back so she can defend him. But then, much to Balarosa's horror, they all realize that it is Gozel. After Gozel's arrival, everyone went inside to eat, and Gozel explains that he came here because his intelligence court found some irregular magical signatures in the area, so it is a real stroke of luck for them to be able to meet each other again. He would also like to have a private chat with Balarosa as well, so she starts worrying that he is actually going to propose to her. When the food arrives, Gozel talks about how he always enjoyed human food and would regularly sneak over to places like this before he became the Dark One, just so he could enjoy it. Gozel asks if Balarosa is able to cook, but she is too embarrassed to answer, so Riz answers for her and tells Gozel that Balarosa is amazing when it comes to preparing desserts, which only makes her even more embarrassed than before. Fleo asks if Gozel is interested in human culture, and he doesn't deny it, but a kingdom's culture is also indicative of its military might, so he could also be said to be on a sort of recon mission right now. Ballyrosa can't take it anymore and yells at Gozel for trampling over the lives of humans, and he doesn't fault her because he is well aware of the harm he is doing. Even if humans view demons as nothing more than pestilence, that doesn't mean he has the right to destroy their lives because of it. Fleo asks what Gozel means when he says pestilence, so it is explained to him that all demons possess malicium in their body, but not all of them are able to control it as Reyes or Gozel can. So when a large number of demons gather in one place, the area becomes harmful to humans. In addition, demons are notoriously hard-headed and get into fights over the slightest provocation, so negotiations are almost never an option. Gozel sees that everyone is silent, so he apologizes for ruining the mood and takes his leave for the day. As Fleo and the others return home, Fleo has a lot to think about because he was initially relieved when he first arrived in this world and saw no signs of discrimination against demi-humans, but the divide between humans and demons is far greater than anything he has ever seen before. In other news, Blondie and Suya are still trying to climb out of the hole they dug themselves into, and Suya is the first one to make it out, but her dummy thickness is making it difficult for her to lift herself out, and when Blondie asks what is taking so long, he hits a face full of the whole bakery Suya is driving and he gets distracted, so he falls back down into the pit. Sometime later, Fleo and the others are all seated for lunch, and Reyes has been getting really good at cooking lately, so everyone really enjoys her meals. Reyes attributes her culinary success to the teachings of Miss Mileno, who took her and transformed her from an idiot sandwich to a 5-star chef. Just then, there's a knock on the door, so Fleo goes to answer it and finds Princess Elizabeth standing there. Fleo is shocked to see her again since he already declined her request to become the new hero, but Elizabeth isn't here to pester him about her request. She just wants to apologize to Fleo for how he was treated. Or more accurately, she wishes to apologize for how Banaza was treated. Fleo ends up inviting her in, so they go to the meeting room where Ballyrosa serves Elizabeth some tea. Ballyrosa apologizes for not having anything that would fit the standards of a princess, but Elizabeth says tea is perfectly fine and thanks Ballyrosa. However, she has important business to discuss with Fleo, so she wants to be left alone with him. The others agree to leave, but Reyes firmly refuses, citing the terrible way the kingdom has treated Fleo up till this point, so there's no way she's leaving him alone with Elizabeth. Fleo is fine with everyone else leaving, but he tells Elizabeth that Reyes has to stay, and if she can't talk about what she wished to discuss in front of Reyes, then he's going to have to ask her to leave. Elizabeth agrees to the terms, so the others give them some privacy and leave the room. To start with, Elizabeth approaches Fleo and apologizes to him once more for the many injustices that the kingdom committed against him, for the various sabotage spells that were cast on the bottomless bag they gave him, and for exiling him to the Delaviza forest. Fleo tells her that she doesn't need to apologize since he is no longer Banaza, and even if she apologizes, isn't going to change much, so he would just like to get to the real point of this meeting. There's no way a princess like Elizabeth came all this way just to apologize to him, so there must be some other reason she's here. Elizabeth admits that she does have another objective in coming here, so she pulls out a magic map which shows the locations of her troops. This is top secret information, so Fleo wonders why Elizabeth would show this to him. She informs Fleo that the purification spell that was cast to keep the demons at bay will soon wear off, and once it does, the stalled demon army is sure to resume their advance and attack the kingdom again. She has taken measures to mitigate the damage by stationing troops in strategic locations to hold off the demon army, but with their limited resources, there are some remote villages which they cannot protect. So while she's not asking him to act as a hero for the sake of humanity, she would appreciate it if Fleo would help by protecting these villages. Reyes fessed up in a rage at how selfish Elizabeth is being to make such a request. After how the kingdom has treated Fleo, how can she expect to thrust the responsibility of protecting villages upon him when she knows he hates war? Elizabeth tells them that the king has been bedridden since the purification spell was cast, but he'll be waking up soon. And since Fleo has connections to the demons, the king is likely to send soldiers after Fleo. This isn't meant to be a threat, but it is true that the king is short-sighted enough to do something like that, so Elizabeth offers an alternative. She can hold the king accountable for his transgressions against the true hero and for appointing the blonde loser as a false hero. In doing so, she can force him to abdicate the throne, and she would like Fleo's help with her plan. The king isn't necessarily all bad, as he has protected the kingdom from many dangers, but when it comes to providing justice for the weak, the king has failed the people of Klyrode, so Elizabeth wants to take over and change things. To do that, she needs to demonstrate the same level of authority and competence as the king, which is why she needs Fleo's help in protecting the unguarded village. Reyes objects to Elizabeth's plan since she is basically just using Fleo as a means to seize the throne. However, Fleo realizes that Elizabeth's real goal here is to ensure that Fleo doesn't end up joining the demon army under any circumstances. Otherwise, there would be no reason to share confidential military information with him. She basically wants Fleo to just go to the unguarded villages, keep them safe, and lay low until the war ends. But Fleo asks if she ever considered that he may share the military positions she showed him to the demons. She certainly considered that, but she trusts Fleo enough that she doesn't think he'd do something like that. So she formally asks Fleo to lend her hair aid in these trying times. Meanwhile, some adventurers were on the trail of Blondie and Suya, who are now wanted all across the country, but they lost sight of them. Suya is getting tired of all this running around, and she hasn't had anything to eat for a long time. Blondie tells her to stop crying and reaches into his bag to pull out some food rations for her. She asks him if he's sure she can have it since they are already running low on food, but he says it's fine. In any case, he's surprised Suya still chooses to stick around him despite everything that has happened, but she could say the same thing about him since he could have ditched her to escape by himself. Besides, she finds him to be quite charming at times, although he may have made a few mistakes. Blondie says he had no choice though, since he would have died if he actually took his hero job seriously, but there's no use talking about it now, so he gets up and says they should keep moving. But as Suya was about to get up, she gets wrapped in a web created by Yuigarn's assistant. She came here looking for a sacrifice, but she didn't expect to catch such a good-looking man. That night, Fleo was deep in thought and staying up late, so Riz asks him if it has something to do with what the princess asked him to do today. He feels conflicted since he doesn't want to fight in the war, but at the same time, he doesn't want to sit back and let those vulnerable villages suffer when he could help. He has also been thinking a lot about what it is he should use his power to accomplish in this world, and if he and Riz have children someday, he would want them to be able to live peacefully with both humans and demons. To make that happen, he is willing to do anything it takes, and while Riz isn't sure how much she can help, she promises to do everything in her power to make Fleo's dream come true. The next day, in a small, remote village, the alarm bell is rung to warn everyone that the demon army is so approaching, so people start evacuating at once. However, this little girl didn't get the memo, so she's about to get jumped by a goblin. Fortunately, before any children are harmed, Fleo and Riz jump in to save her. Fleo then creates a barrier to hold back the demons while the little girl runs away, and while Riz did say she would help Fleo in any way possible, she didn't expect him to take on such a tedious job without a reward. Fleo explains that he can't possibly accept a reward from Elizabeth since that would mean he sided with the human kingdom for money. He lost to Elizabeth the moment he agreed to hear out her request. Since Elizabeth is so cunning, Riz worries that she may one day end up becoming Fleo's second wife, but Fleo assures Riz that he has no intentions of marrying Elizabeth. While Fleo and Riz were talking, one of the demons questions why a human and a demon are associating with one another, but Fleo simply answers that they are the guards of this village. He tells them that if they agree to withdraw from the village, then he'll let them go, but if they still insist on inflicting harm on the people here, Fleo will show no mercy. The demons tell Fleo not to underestimate them, but Fleo isn't underestimating them. It would just be a waste of time and energy to fight when Fleo is guaranteed to win. And besides, they can't even break through his barrier anyway, so they might as well just withdraw. Just then, a giant Cyclops walks up and declares that he can break the barrier. But before he does, he notices Riz and immediately starts roasting the entire lupine race, calling them cowardly fools and insulting their leader, Fengril, for getting himself killed. Riz was willing to follow Fleo and show mercy to the demons before, but even though her brother was defeated, she will not stand for anyone belittling the proud lupine race. Fleo doesn't really approve of the violence, but if it's that important to Riz, then he won't stop her, although he asks her not to kill any of them. Riz agrees, so upon exiting the barrier, she starts dashing around the Cyclops and bites holes through his arms and legs. The Cyclops mocks her for thinking weak attacks like this would be enough to stop him, but Riz is well aware of how tough Cyclopses are. She's just showing a little self-restraint so she doesn't accidentally kill him. Riz then leaps into the air and uses Boogie Woogie to swap positions with the Cyclops. And when the Cyclops tries to attack her by throwing his club, she just switches places with him again and causes his own attack to strike him. And while he's on the ground, Riz uses several trees to pin his limbs to the ground so that he can't move anymore. The Cyclops complains that Riz is using the same tactics humans use, but if Riz fought normally, then the Cyclops would be dead by now. Cyclops can't accept defeat, so he orders the other demons to attack as well, but Fleo puts a stop to that immediately. He heals the Cyclops and reiterates that he just wants them to withdraw, so he would much rather avoid any unnecessary violence. Of course, he could have just teleported them to the Delaveza forest to get them away from the village, but they would just end up coming right back. He would ideally like to become friends with all of them, but if they insist on fighting, then Fleo will break every bone in their bodies and heal them just to do it all over again. The demons get the message and back off, but Riz asks if it was really okay to let them go like that. They may have voluntarily withdrawn, but they'll just attack again if they are ordered to, so Riz thinks it would have been better to torture them until they lose the will to fight. But while that may have guaranteed that the demons wouldn't attack anymore, it would only deepen the hatred between humans and demons. The people of the village soon come out to thank Fleo for his help, but Fleo is just glad no one was hurt, and he tells them that they can thank the princess for asking him to help. Back at the castle, Elizabeth receives a report that a mysterious adventurer has been saving villages and giving the credit to her. Elizabeth immediately realizes that it must be Fleo, and that means he accepted her request, so she plans to return the favor later. At the same time, while Fleo is chasing away more of the demon army, Gozel is watching from above, and he is enraged that his brother, Ugard, would go behind his back and order soldiers to attack. Just then, Gozel receives terrible news that Ugard is planning to dethrone him and has already taken up residence in the throne room, and Gozel will not stand for such disrespect. But unknown to him, Ugard has prepared a trump card involving the sacrifice of Blondie and Suya, so even if Gozel may be stronger than Ugard normally, the sacrifice may be enough to tip the scales in Ugard's favor. A lot of stuff happened after that, and Gozel ends up going to Fleo's house to ask him for a favor with Eulimenes. He wants to be allowed to live in Fleo's house for a while, and the request is so ridiculous that Riz thinks he must be joking, but Gozel is dead serious. To give Fleo the full picture of why he is asking to stay here, he explains everything that happened after he heard of Ugard's betrayal. While he was on his way back to the demon realm to deal with his brother, Eulimenes was in the castle, trying to convince the other high-ranking demons not to betray Gozel. One demon corrects her and says they aren't betraying Gozel at all. Ugard just issued a challenge to Gozel, so they are acting as witnesses. But that's part of the betrayal that Eulimenes is talking about, as they shouldn't even be entertaining the idea of someone challenging Gozel in the first place. They still believe Gozel is the only one worthy of the throne, but now that a rebellion has started at the hands of Ugard, Gozel needs to prove that he is still strong enough to defend his right to the throne. Eulimenes reluctantly goes along with it, so they'll walk into the throne room where the duel will take place. And even though they agree to spectate the duel, they still find it insulting that Ugard has already parked his dumbass on Gozel's throne. Ugard's succubus Fufun tells them that there's no harm in it since Ugard is certain of his victory. Fufun reiterates that she called them all here to act as witnesses to the duel and nothing more, so she doesn't want anyone interfering, and they all agree to these terms, all aside from Eulimenes, who still believes it is unfair to question Gozel's authority after all he has done to ensure the well-being of the demons. However, Fufun doesn't care in the slightest and just makes fun of Eulimenes instead. She can't stand it any longer, so she decides to just take matters into her own hands and arrest Ugard for betraying Gozel. But as she leaps in to attack him, she is reminded that he is still leagues above her in strength, so Ugard sends her flying with a single punch. And to make sure Eulimenes won't be able to interfere with the duel, Fufun plans to eliminate her completely. But before that can happen, Gozel arrives to save her. He leaves the Eulimenes in Griel's care while he faces his brother, and Ugard is still as confident as ever, so he declares that he is formally challenging Gozel to a duel for the right to title and throne of the Dark One. With his sacrifice spell ready to go at any moment, he is confident in his victory, but Gozel sees no point in agreeing to a meaningless duel like this. Ugard tries to bait him into accepting by telling him his people have lost faith in his ability to lead due to his foolish actions. Gozel wants to know what actions he took that Ugard believes to be foolish, so he begins listing off everything he disagrees with Gozel on, from the rumors of him spending a lot of time with the human named Fleo, to the fact that he refused to continue the attack on the humans when they are at an advantage in the war. There are rumors going around the Demon Kingdom that Gozel is secretly siding with the humans, so Gozel asks everyone if they really hold that belief, but they are unable to answer. If his people have truly lost faith in him, then Gozel realizes he has no choice left, so he begins to unleash the power of the Demon Ring. Ugard thinks Gozel is finally ready to begin the duel, so he has Fufun prepare to sacrifice Blondie and Suya for his power boost. However, to his shock, Gozel just takes off the Demon Ring and tells him that he can have the throne if he wants it so badly. From this moment forth, Gozel has formally resigned from his position as the Dark One, since there's no point in fighting for his throne if his people don't think he deserves it. Gozel then turns to leave, but Ugard feels insulted by Gozel turning his back to him, so he yells at Gozel to come back here and fight him like a man. And that reminds Gozel there's one last thing he needs to do, so he turns around and kicks Ugard so hard that he is sent flying through the castle walls and off the side of the cliff. That was payback for hurting Eulimenes, and now that he has done that, he bids his former subordinates farewell and leaves for good. They never imagined Gozel would just leave, so they don't know what to do now. And Fufun is busy thinking of how to get Ugard out of the ravine, so it looks like Blondie and Suya have the perfect chance to escape. That brings us back to the present, and after leaving the Dark Army, Gozel and Eulimenes had nowhere to go, so that's why they ask Fleo to let them stay here. After hearing the entire story, Fleo is fine with letting them live here, but he will have to discuss things with the others first. And coincidentally, Balarosa happens to enter the room at that exact moment. Gozel has a smile on his face as he cheerfully greets her, but the smile on Balarosa's face fades away as she sees him, even more so when Fleo tells her that Gozel will be living here now. The rest of the girls are gathered to explain the situation to them, and they are shocked to find out that Gozel gave up being the Dark One. However, with his voluntary resignation, he can no longer live in the Demon Kingdom, and Fleo is the only person he knows in the Human Kingdom that could help him, which is why he is asking for this favor. Blossom questions Gozel about the recent attack by the Dark Army, but Gozel had nothing to do with that, so he asserts that he isn't here as an enemy, and he won't do anything to put them in danger. The girls are a little more open to the idea of him staying since he promises to be docile, but even if he has to take care of Eulimenes as well, Reese finds it hard to believe that Gozel is completely broke all of a sudden when he held such an important position before. The reason he is flat broke now is because Eulimenes' intel team also quit the Dark Army when they found out he was leaving, and they'd have been a huge help to him with keeping casualties down, so he gave them his fortune to help them start a new life for themselves. Eulimenes complains that Gozel is always too nice for his own good, and it always leaves her with the short end of the stick. Getting back on topic, Fleo says he is fine with having Gozel stay here, but he wants to know what the girls think about it. Blossom says she's fine with it if Reese and Fleo say okay, and none of the others have any objections either, but Balarosa is very vocal about her objections. Even if he is retired, he was the Dark One a few days ago, so how can they just let him live here? However, after some persuasion by Riz, Balarosa relents and Gozel is officially added to the family. After the meeting, everything goes back to normal, but Gozel has nothing to do since he is no longer the Dark One, so he goes around asking if there's anything for him to do. Blossom tells him she's fine since she already has Haya helping her with the field, so Gozel goes over to Byrelli in the horse stables to ask if he can help her. But his immense magical pressure starts scaring the horses, so Byrelli asks him not to disturb her. Since the others don't need help, Gozel goes to Fleo and is shown the room where he stores all his weapons, and Gozel recognizes the scales on the shields to be the same ones from his driving unit that suddenly died a while back. Fleo tries to explain himself, but Gozel says there's nothing to be sorry for since they were the ones that attacked him first, and he is honestly impressed with how well made the dragon scale shields are, so he and Fleo have a fun discussion about it. Eulimenes feels conflicted seeing Gozel get along so well with a human, but Reese doesn't think it's that big of a deal since Gozel isn't the Dark One anymore, and he seems to be a lot more lively now than he ever was while leading the demons. That night, everyone has a bonfire party to welcome Gozel and Eulimenes, but while everyone is having fun, Balarosa is sitting off in the distance since she still doesn't know how to feel about Gozel's arrival. Late into the night, the party had ended and everyone went to bed, but Balarosa was still lost in thought. Reese and Fleo come out to check on her since they had noticed that she seems to be feeling down, so they ask if it's because they suddenly allowed Gozel and Eulimenes to stay here. Balarosa says it's not exactly because of that, and she doesn't have any right to deny a guest when she herself is a guest in this house. It was just surprising to her how all the others were willing to accept the change so easily. She feels out of place, especially since she doesn't contribute to the household at all, and she knows that even though they may be demons, they are able to laugh and get along just like them. So they aren't as different as she initially thought, but even so, she can't accept them. She may have never actually made it to the front lines, but she has seen knights crying over their lost friends in battle. Even if Gozel is retired as the Dark One isn't a bad person, she can't just happily live under the same roof as him. Fleo tells her it is perfectly fine to hold animosity towards the demons after all that has happened since any human would feel that way in this situation, but that's just part of life. And honestly, Fleo doesn't think Gozel came here because he needed a place to stay. It's much more likely that he came here to keep an eye on them because between Fleo, Haya, and Reese, a lot of powerful forces are gathered here, so he probably wants to watch them to make sure nothing bad happens. It doesn't bother them to be watched since they don't have anything to hide, but living in harmony means accepting others for who they are, so Balarosa shouldn't force herself to like him. Honestly, Riz finds it a bit strange that Balarosa is okay with her, but she absolutely hates Gozel. Riz reminds her that she was also once in the Dark Army, and the first time they met, she fully intended on letting her troops eat Balarosa and the others alive. Balarosa had forgotten all about that, but now that she has lived with Riz for so long, she can't see her as a threat anymore since she is always acting silly. They make a good point, so the next day, Balarosa confronts Gozel and Eulimenes and tells them that if they ever harm a single human, she will never forgive them. Gozel finds it amusing that Balarosa is willing to accept their presence here, but she's still going to keep an eye on them. And Euliminus just mocks her for taking such a bold stance when she was so scared yesterday, but this time, Balarosa retorts by reminding Euliminus how she got wiped out by Fleo 2 times in a row already. Gozel then approaches Balarosa and offers a handshake to commemorate their new friendship, but she still doesn't trust him yet, so she says she'll hold off on the handshake until she is sure he is trustworthy. Meanwhile, over in the Demon Kingdom, Blondie and Suya are making a run for it to escape, and things work out great for them since Blondie was able to steal a ton of jewels and magic gems from their treasury. So once he sells them, he and Suya will be able to live an easy life with all the money they'll get. Suya likes the sound of that, but she reminds Blondie that they are still wanted people in the Kingdom of Klyrode. But for once, Blondie actually thought ahead and planned on leaving the Kingdom of Klyrode forever once they get out of here, but they still need to escape the demons first. Over in the Demon Castle, Uegard had resumed the attack on Klyrode, but every attempt the demons have attempted to make in advancing the front lines has been met with resistance. He angrily asks Fufun why his army can't move forward with the attack, so she explains that the Kingdom of Klyrode has set several traps along the paths the demon army takes, so it is difficult for them to press forward. Traps weren't a problem last time they went to war, so Uegard wonders why the army is having trouble with them now. Fufun tries to work up the courage to tell him that it's because he is too dumb to know how to avoid the traps. But Uegard doesn't even let her finish speaking and demonstrates the level of stupidity he possesses by ordering an extra large army to march through the traps. Some of his men may die, but that is a sacrifice he is willing to make. Although Fufun asks him how he intends to amass an army that is willing to walk straight through a minefield, but he just pins that responsibility on her and gut punches Fufun out of the room so he doesn't have to answer any more questions. Uegard then walks past all the demon generals, and once he is gone, they start talking amongst themselves about how utterly screwed they are. Uegard only has 2 brain cells in his head, and one of them is clearly on vacation, so it's no wonder the war effort is failing now. Gozel has always made well-thought-out plans of attack before any action was taken, but now that the intel squad has quit along with Euliminus, that's not an option anymore. The morale among the soldiers has also been at an all-time low with how badly things are going, so if things don't change soon, the Dark Army is sure to fall to ruin. Just then, Fufun makes her way back into the palace, and while hanging from the ceiling, she declares that she knows how to fix the morale issues flawlessly. She's going to hold an office pizza party, but first, someone needs to help her get down. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Klyrode, Riz and Fleo are at a festival, and Riz has just won first prize at a stall. She excitedly hugs Fleo and informs him that the prize is a voucher for a local hot spring, so she's excited to get to spend time with him. However, the voucher is only valid for 3 or more people, meaning they would have to bring a friend along, so Riz doesn't want it anymore. Riz and Fleo continue walking through the festival, but everyone else has joined them now, so Riz is bummed out that she can't spend any alone time with Fleo. Fleo tries to cheer her up because the initial reason for this trip was to get to know Gozel and Euliminus better, so she should just try to have fun with everyone else for now. They are welcomed by the hostess of the hot spring, and Fleo is appreciative of the hospitality, so while he is signing in, all the girls are given complimentary yukata. They are all directed to the changing rooms, but before they leave, Riz goes up to one of the attendants and asks for directions to the hot spring that boosts fertility. The attendant immediately knows what Riz is hoping for, so she hands her a map and wishes her good luck. Meanwhile, the other girls are on their way to the changing room, and Blossom accidentally bumps into a huge man. She apologizes for not watching where she was going, but the man turns out to be Uegard, who is currently disguised as a human, but Blossom doesn't know this, so Fufun stops Uegard's rage before he can blow his cover. After Blossom leaves, Uegard asks Fufun why she stopped him from killing that girl, so Fufun reminds him that they came here with the rest of the demon army, disguised as humans for the sole reason of raising morale among the troops, so if he blows their cover by getting angry over nothing, then all her efforts will be ruined. Just then, the other demons show up, and they are all looking forward to getting to relax in a hot spring, but before they go their separate ways, Fufun reminds them all that they need to wear the necklaces she made for them at all times because it's the only thing keeping their militia in check. As they pass, Riz, Euliminus, and Gozel wonder what's going on since all the demon generals are gathered here. They don't seem to be causing trouble, so Gozel wonders if he should have tried doing something like this for the army while he was still the Dark One. Riz tells both Gozel and Euliminus that they have to avoid the other demons at all costs, because if he and Uegard come face to face with one another, then there's definitely going to be trouble, and she's not going to let anything ruin her hot spring date with Fleo. They then return to the rest of the group and are led to the room where the girls will be staying. They all love the traditional feel of this place, but while the girls will be sharing a room, Fleo and Riz have their own private room, and Riz plans to put that fertility hot spring to the rest tonight. As Gozel walks in, Fleo mentions that he got a separate room for him as well since he is the only other guy here, but he says he wouldn't mind sharing a room with the girls. However, Eulimenes and Balarosa are greatly opposed to the idea. Blossom calms them down and says they should just focus on having fun for the day, so everyone starts talking about what they plan to do with their time. Riz is growing impatient, so she starts urging Fleo to hurry up so they can leave together. Haya attempts to accompany them, but Riz isn't letting anyone interfere with her baby-making plans. Haya understands and agrees to leave them alone for the day, but since she doesn't get to stay by Fleo's side today, she decides to kill some time by messing with Damalinas, who is still trapped in her mindscape. It's been a while since Haya last came here, so Damalinas asks what she wants. Haya explains that she wants Damalinas to assist her with something, and Damalinas doesn't seem opposed to helping her, until Haya summons a bed in the middle of the mindscape and begins explaining her goal. After many nights of watching Fleo and Riz's nighttime escapades, she wanted to try it out for herself, but she needs a partner to do the deed, and that's where Damalinas comes in handy. Damalinas tries to argue that they can't do it because they are both women, but even spaghetti is straight until it gets wet. However, before Haya can go through with it, Damalinas freaks out and throws Haya out of her own mindscape, so Haya is starting to think consent might be a bit important for this. Meanwhile, Fleo and Riz have just arrived at the Yanaji bath for fertility, and she excitedly tells Fleo that after they've soaked in the bath to the fullest, they test the effects of the bath thoroughly back at home. Fleo gets a little flustered, but he's also looking forward to it as Riz drags him into the bath. Meanwhile, Baireli is elsewhere doing her own thing, and that involves visiting the local bedroom toy store for personal reasons. But while she is nervously walking up to the door, she is nearly given a heart attack as Haya pops up behind her. Haya came here looking for ways to entice Damalinas into smashing with her, so she isn't judging Baireli. But since they are both here anyway, Haya pushes Baireli inside so she can test out some of the toys on her for research purposes. While Haya and Baireli are having their fun, the others are having their own fun at a bar. While drinking, Blossom notices that Balarosa has been staring at Gozel this whole time, so she starts joking that if Balarosa likes Gozel so much, she should go over and start a conversation. Balarosa asserts that she is just trying to keep an eye on Gozel and Eulimenes since she still doesn't trust them, but then Blossom calls over to Gozel, and now that he has an excuse to speak to Balarosa, he immediately starts complimenting her on how great she looks. Eulimenes is irritated that Gozel can't stop flirting with Balarosa, but Blossom then invites him to have a drink with them, and Gozel happily accepts the offer. At the same time, Ugard and his soldiers are also happily eating and drinking to their heart's content, and they absolutely love how delicious all the food here tastes. Ugard asks for someone to provide entertainment for the group, so Fufin volunteers since she has a little dance routine cooked up. However, as she starts dancing, no one wants to see that, so Ugard punches her off the table and has someone else do the entertainment instead. Two demon brothers step up and start fighting one another for Ugard's entertainment, but the fight starts getting a little too heated between them, and it causes one of them to lose their necklace. Meanwhile, outside the hot springs, Blondie and Suya have just arrived, and they are relieved to finally be out of demon territory, so there should be no way they run into any demons here. Suya complains that she is exhausted from all the running, but Blondie says she doesn't need to worry since he can buy her all the food and relaxation she needs once he sells the gem he stole from the demons. But just then, the gem starts absorbing Malicium in the area as the two demons burst out of the wall with their fight. All the Malicium gets absorbed into the crystal, and once it is full, it transforms Blondie into a huge monster. While all this is going on, Balarosa and the others are still at the bar, and Balarosa ends up going over to talk to Eulimenes. She can tell that Eulimenes is upset because she wants Gozel to go back to his former role as the Dark One, and Eulimenes doesn't deny it because it's true. There's no other demon with as much power as Gozel, and he truly cares for all the demons under his command, so Eulimenes can't stand him being reduced to a lowly human disguise while basically freeloading off Fleo. Balarosa now understands Eulimenes a bit better, and while she thought Eulimenes was a bit childish at first for not wanting to accept that Gozel isn't the Dark One anymore, but now she realizes that Eulimenes must be in love with Gozel. Hearing this comes as a shock to Eulimenes. But there's an even bigger disaster happening right behind them as a giant monster has begun tearing down the inn. Amidst all the chaos, the people in the inn are put in grave danger, but luckily, Fleo is able to stop everything from collapsing before anyone gets hurt. However, since he is actively holding the inn up, he can't go to check out what's going on, so he asks Riz to handle it instead. Meanwhile, the others assume Ugard and the other demons must be behind this somehow, but the monster needs to be stopped, so Balarosa, Blossom, and Bolano prepare to head into battle. However, Gozel tells them to wait a minute since there's not much they can do against a monster like that. Ballerosa and the others strongly protest since they can't just leave Fleo to handle everything by himself. They may not act like it, but they were all once knights, so they are capable of handling themselves in battle. They stay by Fleo's side in hopes of being useful to him for all the help he has given them, so they can't do nothing at a time like this. Eulimenes doesn't see any sense in the girls' actions, but Gozel finds their motivations to be inspiring, so he decides to take action as well. He asks Eulimenes if she'll join him in battle once more, and she doesn't like the idea of fighting to protect humans, but since Gozel is the one who asked, she agrees. Gozel then teleports both of them to a nearby rooftop, and Reese joins them with the intention of destroying whoever is disrupting her alone time with Fleo. At the same time, Ugard spots Gozel, so he excitedly rushes out to face him and have a proper duel to prove which one of them is stronger. Ballerosa and the others see Ugard confronting Gozel, so she decides to inform Fleo, while Blossom and Belano go evacuate the people that are caught up in this mess. Meanwhile, Ugard has begun his malicious attack and sends several blasts in Gozel's direction, but he is easily able to block them all. So Ugard switches things up and begins using the Malicium monster to attack instead. The monster attempts to strike down Eulimenes, but Gozel is still able to counter the attack and keep her safe. At the same time, Ballerosa had just gotten to Fleo, so he asks her if everyone in the building is safe now. She assures him that the people have been evacuated, but there is a monster rampaging near the resort, and she is certain that it has something to do with how Ugard and his underlings snuck into the resort disguised as humans. Ballerosa thinks Gozel might have conspired against them to make this happen, but Fleo knows for a fact that there's no way he would do something like that. But since Gozel is here, that means Fleo can leave him to handle Ugard and the monster, so he's going to focus on keeping the building in one piece. Over on the roof, Ugard blasts Gozel with a ton of Malicium, and then he proceeds to trap him with it. Gozel is strong enough to stay in control and eventually escape. Gozel may be the stronger one, but this fight is not going to be easy for him with how skilled Ugard is at controlling Malicium. He could even potentially control the bodies of other demons, so they need to remain on guard. Their first objective is to rescue the poor human who got himself trapped in the magic gem, so Breeze offers to take care of that. She has dealt with Blondie enough times to know that this is somehow his fault, so she teleports next to him and punches him straight out of the gem as revenge for ruining her spa day. With Blondie released, both the magic gem and the monster disintegrate, but that leaves Suya with nothing to stand on, so she begins falling to her doom. However, before she goes splat, Gozel uses his magic to save her since he promised Fleo that he wouldn't let any humans get hurt. Gozel spots the demon generals, so he asks Eulimenes to go deal with them while he handles Ugard, but before he starts fighting, he asks Ugard if he is willing to just back off and call it a day. Ugard immediately refuses, since he wants nothing but violence. He charges at Gozel in an attempt to punch him, but Gozel easily evades him. Ugard tries to attack him again, but this time Gozel catches his punch and tells Ugard that he needs to be more cautious of his actions now that he is the Dark One. This just makes Ugard even more angry, so he continues stroking at Gozel. Meanwhile, Eulimenes is confronting the demon generals, and she asks them why they would agree to attack a hot spring with Ugard. The generals all tell her that they have no intentions of fighting as they literally just came here to relax, but Fufun is totally siding with Ugard, so she attempts to take out Eulimenes and gets pounced on. After all of Ugard's attacks have failed to connect, Gozel smiles and activates a spell which replicates all the attacks Ugard had been throwing, only this time they actually managed to connect. Ugard realizes Gozel's spell will reflect all his attacks, but since it doesn't necessarily stop Gozel from being damaged, Ugard just has to land clean hits on him first. As he strikes Gozel, he mocks him for being such a pacifist despite all the power he has at his disposal, and even now he is still choosing to defend instead of fighting back. By this point, Gozel has had enough of this, so he grabs Ugard by the face and uses a spell he had hoped to never use again. His spell temporarily seals away all of Ugard's Malicium, and without Malicium, he is barely stronger than an average human. Ugard had never heard of such a spell, so Gozel explains that he perfected it in order to defeat the former Dark One and seize the demon's throne. The spell was originally being developed by the humans, so he just finished what they started. Ugard is outraged that Gozel would dare to use a human spell on him, but at that moment, the hostess and her crew all pull out special talismans which they use to bind Ugard and capture him. The same also goes for the rest of his demons, although Fufun seems to be enjoying it. The hostess had a special failsafe spell imbued on all the yukatas she gives to the guests, so since Ugard's group had been deemed to be a danger to everyone here, she uses the yukatas to send them flying away from here. Eulimenes is surprised by how easy it was to get rid of them, but then she hears the distinct sound of cheeks getting clapped downstairs, so she looks to see what's going on, and she finds that Reese is indeed clapping Blondie's cheeks. Suya tries to apologize for Blondie's mistake since he didn't know the gem would turn him into a giant monster, but Reese keeps clapping his cheeks until Balarosa shows up and tells her that she needs to leave the area since Fleo is about to use his repair magic to fix the resort. After Fleo has repaired the building, the others offer to help get everything inside back up and running, while Blondie and Suya go on the run from the resort staff. Blondie pulls out the magic shovel to escape, but he accidentally digs his way into a water hole, so he gets blasted away. Back at the resort, the hostess thanks Fleo and his group for helping get the resort back up and running. So while she can't offer much of a reward, she tells them to enjoy themselves as much as they want while they are here. And now that the pesky distractions are finally gone, Rise can enjoy her bath. Once she finally gets in the bath, she's really enjoying it, although Luminous is hesitant to get in since she's afraid of water. However, once she finally works up the courage to get in, she starts enjoying it as well. Byrelli and Haya are also enjoying the bath, although Haya doesn't really understand what is so great about being surrounded by hot water. Blossom and Bolano are also there, and they've been meaning to ask Bolano what she was doing while all that chaos was going on earlier. Byrelli doesn't know how to answer, so Haya tells the others that the two of them were spending some very intimate time together. Byrelli gets embarrassed and tells Haya not to make it sound weird, but her reaction lets the others know that what happened was definitely weird. Fleo and Gozel are in the bath next door, and Fleo is glad the girls seem to be getting along well. He also never could have imagined that he would be getting along so well with Gozel. Gozel has been interested in Fleo since the first day they met, since Fleo had the guts to remain calm in the face of his power. And with all the strength Fleo possesses, he chooses not to use his power for personal gain, but rather to try and foster peace between humans and demons. The thought he had at the time was that if he and Fleo joined forces, they may be able to put a stop to the war once and for all, but Fleo thinks Gozel is overestimating his capabilities. It is true that Fleo managed to win the Isekai lottery and gain unimaginable power for basically no reason, but there's still no spell that can stop people from fighting. Nothing is going to change if they rely solely on magic, so Fleo isn't sure how he will solve the war issues. However, he has friends in this world that he can trust now, so he intends to rely on them to do whatever he can to make the world better. Hearing this, Gozel extends his hand to Fleo and offers his aid in whatever plans Fleo manages to come up with, and Fleo happily reciprocated. A while later, everyone gathers inside where they are treated to a lavish meal by the hostess and her crew, and one crew member offers Reese a special eel pie, which is known to provide enough energy to keep you going for hours. Reese thanks her for her assistance, and while everyone is busy eating, Balarosa approaches Gozel. Gozel is pleasantly surprised since Balarosa has never once willingly approached him before, so he asks her what she needs. She tells him she is here to thank him for what he did during the battle earlier today, since Reese had told her about how he made sure to keep humans safe during the whole thing. He tells her it's no big deal since he can't go breaking the promise he made to her, but Gozel getting close to Balarosa makes Luminous jealous. Everyone has a good time at dinner, and by the time everyone has gone to bed, Reese comes in to check on them all. After making sure they are all sound asleep, she goes over to Fleo, who is sitting and staring at the sky. Now that it's just the two of them, Fleo asks Riz what she thinks about humans in general, and while hasn't really put much thought into it, she would have to say that on the surface, humans seem weaker than her race. However, after spending so much time with humans, she understands that superiority isn't determined solely based on military achievements. For instance, she still remembers how Balarosa made her taste defeat when they had a baking contest a while back, so while it is still difficult to say that she likes the human race, she at least doesn't think of them as enemies anymore. But her feelings aside, she asks Fleo why he suddenly asked her a question like that, so he says he just wanted to know how she felt. The war between the humans and demons is likely going to get worse from here, so if it does, Fleo plans to guard the town to make sure no one gets hurt. He would appreciate it if Reese would stay by his side through it all to make sure he never goes too far. And if she's with him, he is sure he can make it through without making any mistakes. Reese says she will always stay by his side no matter where he goes, especially since they need to make sure the world will be a safe place for their future child. From there, they get down to business, and by the next morning, Riz is in a really good mood. The others realize what must have happened, and Haya is upset that she didn't get to watch them while they did it since she was asleep. Once they reach the gate of the resort, Fleo raises his hand and says it's time to go home as he casts a teleportation spell. Back home, everyone has settled back into their normal routine, and Blossom is back in the field, working with Saib. On Bolano's end, she has just introduced herself to her class and tells them how she used to suck at magic, but thanks to her teacher, she is now decently capable of using it, so she's going to work hard to teach them everything she learned from Fleo. Haya is also hard at work with her magical gardening, and Blossom is pretty impressed with how well everything turned out, so they will have even more veggies to sell in town later. Gozel has also been busy learning how to craft weapons with Fleo, but Euliminus doesn't get what the point is since it's not like Gozel plans to open up a weapon shop or something. But Gozel is actually considering doing exactly that, so Euliminus starts trying to talk him out of it. Just then, Balarosa comes over and she thanks Gozel for the armor he made for her since it was perfect for her. But the fact that Balarosa is now friendly with Gozel still makes Euliminus jealous, so she starts growling at Balarosa. Balarosa tries to change the subject and brings up how the princess is being coronated today, so she hopes the demon army doesn't resume their attack and ruin it. And Gozel tells her that she doesn't need to worry about that since Uegard won't be able to use his Milicium for a long while since Gozel sealed it, so there's no way he could lead an attack anytime soon. Over at the capital, Princess Elizabeth is greeted by her people as she has just been crowned queen, but as she returns inside the castle, we find out that she hasn't been able to locate her father. She believes he must have fled when he realized that all the awful things he had been doing would be revealed. And while he may be her father, Elizabeth still needs to make sure he gets punished for all the wrongdoings he committed. She does not want to waste the chance Fleo provided her with, so she swears to reshape the kingdom no matter what it takes. In other news, Blondie and Suya are on the run again and hiding in a hole, but that isn't surprising. As nighttime approaches, everyone at Fleo's house gets called in for dinner, and Fleo reminisces about how he came to this world alone, but now he has good friends and a loving wife, so he couldn't ask for a happier life. The end.